Do be seated, thank you. Right, good evening everybody, and this is our budget meeting for the council for the year. Hopefully we've got a good attendance. We have no apologies at the moment, so I'll just do the housekeeping information first. I'm the Mayor of the Borough of Colchester, Councillor Robert Davidson. I'm chairing the meeting today. The meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and on the council's YouTube channel, and will be available to watch afterwards. I want to confirm that all of us present in the room are adhering to the latest government guidance. I can assure those watching that the meeting room is set up to meet social distancing requirements. Whilst we are not wearing masks while seated, these will be worn if and when we leave our seats. We have undertaken a COVID risk assessment for the meeting. To begin, should the alarm sound, please evacuate using the nearest emergency exit and assemble at the skate park on the outside. Leisure World staff will be on hand to direct you. If necessary, we will look to have breaks at approximately 90-minute intervals. And will all councillors please remain seated while speaking to ensure that their contributions are picked up by the microphones. We have one councillor, Councillor Harris, joining the meeting remotely. I confirm that while he can participate in the meeting, he will not be included in the votes, as only those councillors present in the room are legally able to vote. Could you also please make sure that you have your mobile phones turned to silent, please? I'm very pleased to invite Father Alexander Haig to say prayers tonight, as my chaplain, Reverend Elms, is still unwell. So thank you for agreeing to attend. And Father Alexander, if you'd like to say our prayers, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm privileged to do this little duty tonight, and wish the council well. And these are the prayers that we use in our church every Sunday, and indeed more frequently for the our district. O Lord Almighty, the God of our fathers, we pray thee, hearken and have mercy.
Lord, have mercy.
Again, we pray for this country, for our Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth, the royal family, the government, and all in authority, the armed forces, and all who protect us.
Lord, have mercy.
Again, we pray for this borough, dedicated to St. Helen, for the mayor, the council, and its officers and employees, and for those representing it on the county council and in Parliament.
Lord, have mercy.
Again, we pray for all in positions of authority here, for the judges and magistrates, the garrison, the police, and all who protect us.
Lord, have mercy.
Again, we pray for the schools, colleges, and university, for the health, education, and social services, for the business life of the borough, and for the voluntary organisations.
Lord, have mercy.
For thou art a merciful God, and lovest mankind, and unto thee we ascribe glory, to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and ever, and unto ages of ages.
Amen.
And if you will excuse my son who's accompanying me, another Father Alexander Haig, and me from the rest of your proceedings.
Thank you very much, Father Alexander, and you're welcome to leave now or stay and listen to the debate. Yeah, thank you very much, and good fortune with your new church as well. Thank you very much. So, right, as I said earlier, we have no apologies received currently, but we do have two Have Your Say speakers tonight. We have our High Steward, Sir Bob Russell, followed by Petra Crease. So, Sir Bob, if you'd like to come up first for 3 minutes, and a bell will sound after 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm dismayed to learn that the Council's next full meeting, excluding the ceremonial mayor-making ceremony in May, is in July, 5 months away. Is there nothing of importance for councillors to meet and debate for 5 months? I suggest a special meeting is convened to discuss the worsening traffic congestion in Colchester, deliberately made worse by ludicrous highway measures, allegedly temporary, brought in 2 years ago at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, which Essex County Council intends making permanent. To say that as a matter of the County Council and not the Borough Council is to adopt a silo mentality and to dismiss the whole concept of joined-up government. Traffic congestion is a matter that must concern all 51 Borough Councillors. Borough Councillors are the elected representatives of the people, people who are experiencing what the County Council has done with the highways in Colchester, with worse to come. As tonight is when the Council sets the budget for the next year, what County Highways is doing may well affect the income of the borough's car parks, revenue from which is an important part of the Council's finances. What impact will the anti-car measures of Essex County Council have on the Borough Council's finances? Freedom of information requests I put to the County Council have proved to be illuminating. From North Station Railway Bridge to the Essex Hall roundabout, we have the only purpose-built bus lane in the country from which buses are banned. At Headgate, leading from Southway into Head Street, reducing from 2 lanes to 1 lane, causes tailbacks along Southway, up Butt Road and to the Malden Road roundabout and down Balkan Hill. At Middleborough, it is proposed to ban traffic crossing over the River Bridge from south to north into North Station Road, which will divert 3,000 vehicles a day onto the already busy Westway. This will impact on local businesses and those living in the area for whom their journey distances will be lengthened. How does adding to congestion and pollution fit with the claim that the measures are designed to be greener and cleaner? There has been no consultation by Essex Highways with the residents of North Castle and business in North Station Road. It's only when I paid for and personally delivered 800 leaflets to homes and businesses in the area that people first heard about the no-entry ban on traffic crossing over the River Bridge into North Station Road. Mr Mayor, I regret that claims made in leaflets put out by the Liberal Democrats last month and the Green Party last week that the scheme has been dropped are not true. Labour and Conservatives have been somewhat mute. A leaflet last month from the Conservatives did not mention the issue. The last leaflet from Labour was 7 months ago. Silence since then. Traffic congestion in Colchester is a legitimate subject for Colchester Borough Councillors to debate. I urge that a special meeting is convened and, in the spirit of democratic joined-up government, for the Borough Council's views to be sent to County Hall in Chelmsford.
Thank you very much, Sir Bob. Forgive me for saying so, but you brought up quite a few individual topics there, and I think it'd be very helpful if you could issue us with a written submission so that we can consider it properly. Tonight we're fully committed to the budget, so we're not allowed to take any other further business. But you raised some important points, and as you know, we used to be in charge of the highways, but now we work well with the county council. So if you want to get detailed answers, I think a submission would be helpful. And Petra Crease, if you'd like to come up, please. You have 3 minutes, and there'll be a bell after 2, Petra.
Thank you very much. I'd like to stress how important it is that as a rapidly expanding town with new housing developments, retail and leisure parks, and new infrastructure, we don't overlook long-standing areas of Colchester such as Grinstead when it comes to investment and opportunities. That is why I would like to welcome the considerable investment in Grinstead that is included in this budget, that will enable the development of much-needed affordable housing, the redevelopment of Tamarisk Way as an improved community hub and an attractive public space. I grew up on the estate, went to school there and started my family there, and these plans will see the biggest changes on the estate for a long time. But it is important that these changes are not merely cosmetic. They must provide the residents of Grinstead with some solutions to the issues that they are facing and help make Grinstead a better place to live and work. This is too good an opportunity to waste, but everyone driving this work must genuinely engage with the residents, not just pay lip service to them, but include them, consult them, and make sure they feel part of it. This will ensure that the plans are co-developed and provide the promised jobs and employment support that will address issues such as low income and antisocial behaviour. And residents want a nice place to live. Many of the residents are frustrated with the recent spate of antisocial behaviour and criminal damage, but I've been encouraged by how residents have responded. They're keen to find solutions to keep young people occupied. They want to make the area look nicer so that everyone can take pride in where they live. You only have to look at the recent tree planting on the estate that I was pleased to join. Despite the weather and the attention of a few local youths that have damaged the trees, it's been a pleasure to join in with the ongoing maintenance of this area. There is also an active group of people who regularly give up their time to pick up litter and keep the area tidier. So I'd like to urge the Council to make sure we spend this significant investment in the best way possible and ensure it makes the difference that people living and working on Grinstead need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I beg your pardon. Councillor Dundas, would you like to respond?
I'll respond very briefly, Mr Mayor. As one of the members who sit on the Heart of Grinstead board, along with the ward councillors, that I think we're very conscious of that. It's very easy to fall into the trap of just banding about large amounts of money and saying it's 35, 40 million. Well, as long as we spend that, surely everybody will like that, won't they? Without actually listening to what people want. And I think the elected members actually on that board have all been quite united in being concerned that the project sort of snowballs and goes on without genuinely actually consulting with the residents. If whatever the end scheme is imposed rather than actually embraced and worked on jointly with the residents, I think it will be a failure, and I think it will be a terrible missed opportunity. So I think I'm right in saying that there are plans to actually bring some extra representation onto that board, maybe 1 or 2 residents, if memory serves. I think perhaps 1 from the student community, one from the general community, which I would really welcome, because it's a great opportunity. We can't really afford to get it wrong, but if we don't listen and we don't do a proper consultation, it's very easy to do a consultation, but you don't really listen. It needs to be a proper consultation, and we need to listen for it to be a success.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully, Petra, that's an adequate answer for you.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll move on. So I have to ask, has anybody got any declarations of interest? Any of the councillors? Councillor Warnes?
Thank you, Chair. May I declare a non-pecuniary interest in items 7, 11 and 13, as I am a director of Colchester Commercial Holdings Limited.
That's noted. Thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Excellent. So we now move motion A. So I move that the minutes of the council meetings held on the 2nd of December and the 20th of December be confirmed as a correct record. Is that your wish? Excellent. Anybody against? Even better. Thank you very much. So those are agreed. And now we have item 5, Mayor's Announcements. As Sir Bob says, we haven't met very often, have we? And in different venues throughout the year, well, the year and a half. But what I would say is, hopefully, Sir Bob, before the next one in July, there will be the local plan to put to bed. We hope to have heard from the inspector by then, so there will definitely be an extra one fitted in there. As far as my mayoral announcements, on March the 14th, we've got the Commonwealth flag raising outside the town hall, where you're all very welcome to attend. I think it's at 9:45 in the morning on the 14th of March. And then on April the 23rd, I'm hoping to have a fundraiser in the Moot Hall to celebrate St George's Day. So that should be quite enjoyable, hopefully. But more details will follow, of course. The other thing I'd like to say and recognise is that since the last full council meeting, we've agreed and selected a new chief executive to take over on the 1st of April. It's a memorable date, so that'll be easy to remember. But what I'd like to say tonight, of course, is that this is the last meeting that Adrian Pritchard will be our chief executive and presiding over us. So thank you, Adrian, for all the many years of loyal service you've given Colchester. And it's certainly changed a lot over those 20 years. So I wish you a happy retirement, and I'm sure all the other councillors would join me in thanking Adrian for a long and loyal service. Thank you. Right, item 6 is items referred under the call-in procedure, and there are none. Item 7 is recommendations of the cabinets and panels and committees. So item 7.1 is the budget 2022-23 and the medium-term financial forecast. So I'd like to invite Councillor Lissimore, who's the Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Resources, to move the motion, which is up to 5 minutes. Councillor Lissimore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 7.1, budget 22-23, medium-term financial forecast, motion B. I move that the recommendations contained in draft minute 622 of the Cabinet meeting of the 26th of January 2022 and the recommendations contained in the report entitled Precept and Council Tax Levels 2022-23 be approved and adopted. I would like to start personally by thanking the officers who have spent hours working diligently to get this to this meeting tonight. Extra special thanks must go to Dan Gascoigne, Paul Cook and Paul Smith. Thank you. Budget time is always difficult. We have to be frugal, we have to be careful, we have to look after others that need looking after. But as Conservatives, we must learn to breathe, be entrepreneurial, educate to ensure that everyone can live their life to the best of their ability. What we have done with this budget, I believe, follows our Conservative principles. This has been a difficult process which started last May when we took control of the council with the independents. We did not know what we would find. And so whilst it is very much against my principles to talk about the opposition and what they did when they were in control, I think now is the time to discuss a few issues that we found that we did not believe should go ahead, as they were not the best for Colchester. I will just mention a few schemes that I believe highlight the difference between the Lib Dem and Labour opposition to us as a Conservative administration with the independents. The first job our leader did was reduce the amount of cabinet members. Simple enough, save 13,000 year upon year. One question I was asked within the first few weeks was if we wished the project to go ahead to redesign some of the internal offices within the town hall. I am aware, as any householder should be, that you have to maintain your building, but there is a huge difference between being sensible and not. We believe the plans, especially after COVID, were not sensible. The sum of money in the end appears to be around £140,000, and the majority of this money was coming from the new homes bonus. We, as an administration, do not believe that repainting the group room or providing a free fridge and microwave for councillors, who, to my knowledge, had never actually asked for this, was a good use of our new homes bonus. We refuse to allow this to be spent on changes within the town hall just for us. This is not what the money is there for, and our residents would not forgive us for using it in that way. And it was decided to do these internal works to the town hall rather than stopping the chapel at the crematorium from falling down. An issue that is very close to my heart as a former plot owner is around allotments. The communities amongst allotment holders are incredibly strong. They share seed packets over a flask of coffee, and one of the first meetings that Councillor Simon Crowe and myself had in the summer was with members of the Allotment Association. We were therefore dismayed to find the whole system in complete disarray. What was a cost-neutral service is now costing us all as taxpayers. No waiting list stated by Councillor Goss. No waiting list because it was abolished. Plots left to go to weed because no one was inspecting them, and getting new plot holders when they were disused. Why am I talking about allotments? Because it is typical of what the Lib Dem Labour administration did of allowing a service to go downhill. Dare I mention Udo Road tennis courts? Dare I even go all the way back to Abbots Road Activity Centre? Again, services very well loved but neglected, so why don't we build houses on them instead? Udo Road was a Lib Dem Labour catastrophe we were very pleased to halt. So what else did we discover when we took control last May? We discovered a council that was being run by officers in a sensible manner and, due to COVID, was relying on balancing its budget by using its savings, the council's reserves. This is always a delicate matter because we all know that we should have savings and that those savings are there for a rainy day. And COVID for 2 long years was certainly a very wet period. You could say it was a 2-year monsoon. But since last May, we have managed to reduce the amount of our reserves that we need to use, which is excellent news moving forward. The use of our reserves is down from 2.4 million to 1.21 million. Who knows what further deluges will come our way, but the residents of Colchester are safe in the knowledge that we have done everything possible to keep our reserves to an absolute use of reserves to an absolute minimum so that the council's financial future is sound. The main reason that we, as a council, have managed to do this was because of the huge financial help from our own Conservative government. We also cannot ignore the help the Conservative government have given our town through the Town Deal Fund. This government has shown that if, as an administration, you are sensible, frugal but ambitious, they will help us. We will invest in areas such as Greenstead and youth facilities that will make our town the best it can possibly be. This is the Conservative government and Conservative council investing in believing in Colchester long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lissimore. As you know, we have 2 amendments to the budget, so I'd like to invite Councillor King to speak for up to 5 minutes on his main amendment, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I move that recommendations contained as described be approved subject to the main amendments, details of which are in page 1 to 3 of the supplementary information for this meeting. I've sort of lost, I'm not sure the will to speak, but certainly my breath a bit, because Councillor Lissimore's recollections of how things were when she took over are so different from ours, so different from those that went through scrutiny, so different from those that were widely appreciated across the chamber. So I have to conclude that this is, by the nature of things, just what... Ooh. Hey!
Under the Tory
Do carry on. We can still hear you, Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's illuminating that we lost the lights, that's all I would say. But to talk about waste, and 2 or 3 points need to be picked up. It's not true that the last administration were signing off on money for group room repainting at the expense of a chapel. Hadn't seen the final costs, hadn't made a decision. It came out of a cross-party group. It's about the town hall condition and its future. Is a misrepresentation would be the courteous thing to say. And if we're going to take examples and point out where money's going, just look at where national government has spent hundreds of billions and wasted tens of them, much of it to fraud, to the point that your own ministers are resigning. We'll take no lectures on waste from Conservatives, I'm afraid. To the point of this budget, Mr. Mayor, we support it because it largely reflects the priorities and work we set in train with colleagues in the last administration. It's sensible, but it has a key failing. It makes the cost of living crisis worse, not better. That may be only a little bit for some here, but for those at the receiving end, it really matters. Like Conservative-run Essex County Council, these choices add a burden. We don't support it. We want to help ease the pressure on the most vulnerable and just about managing, and we describe 3 ways we'll do it. A freeze on council tax, a Colchester emergency fund to provide targeted help for those in extreme difficulty, whether with food, warmth or essential need, a crisis reaction service to connect residents to sources of support to alleviate hardship, to help a great team, doing even better working with partners. Now the facts are clear. If we want to talk politics, Conservative-run Essex County Council recognises 3 in 10 families, 7 in 10 single mums struggle to have a decent standard of living. We all agree, I think, that the facts are hard to face. Tax rises, dearer mortgages, dearer fuel, wages rising more slowly than prices. This is more than a squeeze on living standards. This is a cost of living crisis, and it's a terrible time to increase council tax. So we want to do whatever we can, stop another rise in council tax, which is now heading to £1,900 a household at Band D, provide extra protection for low-income families. Now, our changes can make a real difference for some between feeding the meter or the family. This crucial budget amendment demonstrates we understand, we care, and we do all we can to help. We recognise that the changes call on reserves and add to some of the budget pressures we face. But those pressures are little different than those managed before, and they're very modest relative to budget. And they are dwarfed by the importance we all here should place on the pressures and anxieties created by the cost of living crisis so many of the vulnerable and just about managing face. They have our support. They should have yours. We urge members to accept the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Councillor Lissimore, would you accept his amendment?
No, we do not accept his amendment.
Sorry, that's not accepted. Sorry, we now need to ask Councillor Gocher to move his main amendment. Up to 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We live in what amounts to an ecological recession. Great Britain is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. As it says in the amendment, according to the World Wildlife Fund's 2019 Living Planet report, the UK is 189th out of 218 countries, meaning the higher the number, the worse you are for nature depletion. According to a further report by the Natural History Museum in London, the UK has just 53% of its biodiversity left, compared to a 75% global average. We know that there is a climate emergency, but it is not just a climate emergency, it's an ecological emergency as well. Now, what can we do as a local council? Well, it strikes me that the one thing that we have to do first and foremost is to get our own policies right. And one of the things that has bugged me since becoming a councillor is that we don't actually have an in-house ecologist or ecology officer within our own staff. Yes, we might hire in on an ad hoc basis advice from outside agencies, but it's done in a very random way, and we don't actually have somebody in-house who works for the council who can dispense advice to us as members and to other officers when we develop policy. Now, I'm not an ecologist. I mean, people sometimes think I am from outside of the council, but I'm not. I'm not an expert. So, for example, to me, planting trees just seemed like an inherently ecologically beneficial thing. But of course, it's more complicated than that. It's more nuanced. What kind of trees? Native trees? Where do you put them? And it seems to me that things happen when, and then we get objections from groups like Colchester Natural History Society that I certainly hadn't anticipated. And it seems to me that this is a problem that could be solved if we just had an in-house ecology officer whose job it is to imbue themselves with this expertise and to advise members and officers. We do this with other issues like planning, where the planning committee takes advice from a team of officers. So why don't we do this with policy that affects ecology? It just seems to be a need that we need to as a professional organisation, do something about, rather than just this amateurish kind of ad hoc getting people in on a random basis. So what I'm proposing is that we set aside a sum of money to pay the salary of an in-house ecologist at something in the region of £34,000 per annum, plus, of course, employer costs. So just to be crystal clear, what I'm talking about, and I've taken officer advice from this, if we employed someone on a CMG 8 grade, let's say £32,000 a year to £38,000 a year, that range, we're talking probably about a total cost to the council of about £50,000 per annum, approximately. So I just want to make that absolutely clear. That is what I'm asking you to vote for. So there's no kind of vagueness about that. We're talking about a figure in total of about £50,000 per year. Apologies if that's not clear enough in the amendment. I'm quite happy to insert after £34,000 per annum plus employer costs as a phrase, if that clarifies, because I don't want there to be any confusion about that. I'm suggesting that this be paid out of reserves, and the ecology officer look at if they can fund this in future years through reducing spending on anything that is ecologically damaging. That might not be possible. I don't want to anticipate their findings on that, so it may well be that I'm asking for quite a big commitment here of £50,000 per year in costs. But I'm suggesting that it is something that is well worth it, because we are in an ecological emergency in this country, and I think local councils have a responsibility in the first instance, before you do anything else, to get our own policies correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gocher. Councillor Lissimore, are you prepared to accept that amendment?
No, we do not accept the amendment.
Okay, so in that case, councillors, we will now debate the budget in its and the two amendments together as one debate. So everybody has 3 minutes to speak, and I have Councillor Fox first on the list.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Tonight the Council is faced with passing a budget that meets the needs of Colchester residents above all else, and that means making difficult decisions, sometimes about how we might feel the Council itself ought to be run. Right now, Colchester residents face tough times. The highest tax burden for 70 years, higher national insurance taxes coming in April, higher energy bills rising again and again in the coming year, higher food costs in the supermarkets, and tonight a Conservative council propped up by Highwood's independents is set to raise the taxes of ordinary Colchester residents. Joining the administration, the Highwood's independents say is the best decision they've ever made, apparently. Following the lead of the Conservative-run County Council and the Conservative Police Commissioner, our residents face a triple whammy of local tax increases. And why is this? It's because of a decade of low growth and low productivity and central government pulling the carpet from under local councils, passing down cuts and blame to local authorities for the state of their services, their roads, their pavements, their local communities. Mr Mayor, if we can afford money for flags and bunting down our high street to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee this year, or opening a gin bar on top of the castle, then we really ought to be able to afford a little extra in the pockets of the people who pay for all of this. Many local, law-abiding citizens won't be partying this year, they'll be tightening their belts. They'll be giving up holidays, the odd treat for the kids. For others, it will mean further reliance on the food bank, school holiday lunch clubs, and other local charities. This budget doesn't go anywhere near enough to support local residents facing the biggest cost of living crisis for over a generation. If ever there was a time to give individuals more control over how they spend their own money, it is now, when inflation is set to rise to over 7%. Energy prices are going through the roof, and for too many residents, that's a roof that really needs some more insulation. With the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we can only anticipate that energy prices will be further affected. And don't tell us it can't be done. New Conservative administrations taking over in Basildon and Harlow are freezing council tax. That's money directly back into the pockets of local residents. Why aren't Colchester Conservatives doing that too? After over a decade saying things should be done differently, what has actually changed since they took over? Anyone who voted Conservative must look at them now and wonder whose side are they on. Did Conservative councillors in Colchester want to see a Conservative government putting up taxes and then doing exactly the same thing, following the same MO as Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak? We welcome the capital programme developed under the last administration, and I hope to see many of those projects come to fruition. But the revenue budget is the opportunity for us to do something locally to help support our residents. This is the time and this is the place for us to do something locally to support them. And so what do we propose to do differently? A freeze on Colchester's council tax next year, an emergency fund to support residents, and a reaction service to connect residents to sources of support and to otherwise alleviate hardship. And I encourage everybody to vote for the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Within the budget, there is no reference to a gin bar on the castle roof. I would welcome Councillor Fox withdrawing that remark.
Councillor Fox, do you wish to comment?
I've got no comment to make, Mr. Mayor.
It's politics, Councillor Laws. Next on the list is Councillor Harris remotely. We're not sure which beach he's on, but we'll find out in a minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you. My wife sends her best wishes to you, Mr. Mayor. She's got her operation tomorrow, which is why I'm not with you this evening. I'm speaking, Mr. Mayor, in favour of Main Amendment A, as proposed by Councillor King. I really strongly support this amendment because it's very personal. It's on behalf of my neighbours, my family, my friends, including those friends of mine who are in business. My ward, my community knows only too well the struggles of the past couple of years. Our Munch Club providing much needed meals, our local food bank, where those who can donate do so, and those that are in need are assisted in that way. We are a good community, Mr. Mayor. We help each other, help those in trouble, and try not to leave anyone behind that's in dire need. Now, you know, Mr. Mayor, as I do, the cost of living issues are rising. Fuel costs, food costs, travel costs, and more to come with the decision to cut free lateral flow tests, as you know. Vulnerability comes in many forms. The low paid are just a pay packet away from a food bank voucher. Some low paid people in my area are relying on family and handouts in the community. People are struggling on low benefits, unable to work, having to have a food bank prop up to keep body and soul together. Now, I know, Mr. Mayor, I'm very business centric and I speak to businesses all the time. Some of those are struggling, those owners of business, to make a decent living, and they see firsthand, Mr. Mayor, the worry lines grow on the faces of my neighbourhood. It's why I support this amendment. My members do not need a rising council tax. They need a freeze in council tax, as Councillor King and Councillor Fox have said. They need some confidence and hope. The proposed emergency fund for those who need a hand will provide that. The crisis reaction service will prop up the vulnerable, whether it's low income, disability, old age, ill health, or for whatever other reason. I urge support for Amendment A. In doing so, I wish to salute the Welfare Department of Council yet again for their empathy and compassion in helping find solutions for the residents, Mr. Mayor. I have to forward to them every year, day in, day out. They're a lifeline in these dark days. I support the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris, and I hope your wife's operation goes well. Councillor Willits next, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, I fully support Councillor Lissamore's budget as she's presented it, and all the arguments, the factual arguments that she has presented to the Council this evening. However, the amendments are something different. Sometimes I support amendments, Mr. Mayor. Sometimes I disagree on political principles with the amendments. Today I'm opposing them because I think the logic behind them is absolutely loony. We have on the order paper a proposal to introduce a Colchester Emergency Fund and a crisis reaction service. How are we going to pay for it, Mr. Mayor? We're going to pay for it by freezing council tax, which actually reduces the amount available to fund these very same new services. it doesn't make sense in the overall round. Although I do have some sympathy with the notion of reducing tax. I welcome Councillor Fox and Councillor King to the tax reduction lobby, in fact. It would appear like me they believe taxes are too high and we should be lifting the burden of high taxation from the residents of the borough. So what I say, Mr. Mayor, is let us march together as brothers in our quest to reduce the tax burden on the downtrodden residents of the borough. I say to Councillor King and Fox, let's ask council tax this week, and then perhaps they will join me in a motion to reduce capital gains tax, inheritance tax, and perhaps even income tax next week. You know, either you're for taxes or you're against, and I don't really see where they're coming from in this particular amendment. If we turn to the second amendment, which I also oppose, Mr. Mayor, it is in fact good to be reminded by the Green Party of the shocking state on regard to the Nature Deprivation Index, where we languish at 189 of 218 civilised countries. Also good to know that the UK has just 53% of its biodiversity in place against a national retained average of 75%. But is the solution to employ an ecology officer? I think any sane-thinking person sees the real problem as the massive housing developments on productive farmland. In the village I live, in my ward, we are building 150 houses where crops were growing 2 years ago, where wildlife flourished, part of our 900 houses a year target that is destroying the environment. We're getting to the point where we've built on just about all the brown land in the borough, and we will now be building on green land for most of our future developments. So, Mr. Mayor, will I support an ecology officer? The answer is no. Would I support an anti-house building officer? You bet I would, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Willits. You've just overran the 3 minutes, but I think you've made your main points. Thank you. Councillor Dundas next, the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll deal very briefly with the amendments. My natural instinct is to warm to parts of Councillor King's amendment. In actual fact, anyone reading it without extra knowledge would almost certainly assume it was from the Conservative group. And it is good to hear a view from that side of the chamber that the council has been supported by the government so much we can freeze council tax. I also have to quickly comment on grants to businesses. This council dished out millions, tens of millions, very rapidly to businesses, which saved a lot of businesses, which I supported. But I very much hope none of those turn out to be fraudulent. Otherwise, after tonight's comments, I'll expect Councillor King to reimburse us personally. I would very much like not to raise council tax at all, and it would no doubt be politically convenient to do just that. But it wouldn't be responsible, and nor would it be serving our residents in the long term. Our reserves are rapidly reducing, and that budget gap, which extends out for the next few years, with this amendment is scary. And this is best case scenario. It assumes no further inflation increases and doesn't take account of the pay settlement, which has not yet been finalised. I might be wrong, but I have a sneaky suspicion that Councillor King would have a, oh my God, what have I done feeling in the pit of his stomach were we to accept this, because he knows that someone, who knows who, will have to deal with the mess it will create in years to come and mean cutting services, cutting support for residents and increasing charges. To Councillor Goucher's amendment, I understand the intent, but it seems very financially confused. Is it 34,000? Is it 50,000? It doesn't seem to have been researched very well. I will cut Councillor Goucher some slack because he might not have employed many people, but the cost of employment is not the same as the headline salary, which has clearly been found out. So I think it needs a bit more research and a bit more clarity about exactly what it will cost. This year, as Councillor Lissimore said, we have reduced planned spending from 25 million to just under 22 million, but did not reduce a single service and simultaneously halved planned use of reserves. For the next year, we have reduced the planned total budget from 22.5 million using 900,000 of reserves to 21.9 million using 450,000. but have actually been able to expand and invest in several areas, whilst again not cutting any services and not increasing any fees or charges by more than inflation. I might need an extra couple of minutes. There we go. We have increased sport and leisure income by 350,000 more than originally thought possible, and have ambitious plans for the future. We have spent less money on ourselves with an official cabinet, where all cabinet members are also group leaders, and no extra or double allowances. Later this evening, we will talk about our capital programme, the most ambitious for Colchester in a generation. The reason we are able to do this is because we have got the day-to-day revenue budget under control. This budget sets the foundations for a bright future because it is efficient, it is financially sound, serves our residents, maintains all services, plans for the long term, and leaves Colchester Council and Colchester Borough in a better place than it has been for many years.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dundas. Our next speaker is Councillor Corey, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I've passed 6 budgets over the years as portfolio holder and as leader of the council, and I've always taken every minute and second to talk about the positives of those budgets that we've put through. So it's quite disappointing, really, to hear Councillor Lissamore take a lot of her time on the attack and spinning some of the truth about what was in the budget and what was left to invest in this town and the town hall. Anyway, this budget in front of us also does not acknowledge or address the genuine crisis in front of us and affecting all of us, but in particular affecting the struggling families out there who are seeing inflation, food prices, the energy crisis, the national insurance tax rise, and now the council tax rise in front of them. As Lib Dems, we support this joint amendment to address the real and present crisis faced by our residents. There are 3 practical measures: freezing council tax for this year, creating the emergency fund targeted at those in most difficulty, paying for food and for warmth, and then lastly, in absolute crisis, a crisis reaction service. And we know we have an excellent welfare and benefits team who support people above and beyond to keep them in their homes. This money in this fund will be for alleviating hardship where people will be pushed by their increased energy bills, by increased council tax bills. They'll be pushed to not be able to afford their housing. So that fund would be a godsend for many people to support them at this time. I accept the Conservative budget is cautious. It's right to be cautious in these times, and it's better to plan under caution rather than being questioned under caution like the Prime Minister. This is a time where we actually need to be more active, I think, in supporting our residents. So the 3 ways mentioned are an active way of stepping in to support residents. Furthermore, I do support the capital paper coming afterwards because it's right to invest in our borough. But I think being too cautious will mean we lose the opportunities to invest in our town, to support our people in the most vulnerable situations, but also to create business, to create wealth in our borough, which will help all. I think this budget misses that and does not tackle the crisis in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. Our next speaker is Councillor Scott Patel.
Thank you. I was content with the elements of the budget, but in good conscience, knowing that some residents will have to make the terrible choice between heating or eating and an overall cost of living crisis, I couldn't vote to make my vulnerable residents feel even less supported in this time of urgent need. Having voted, bear with me, I'm getting ahead of myself, I cannot, with a clear conscience, support the unamended budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scott Patel. Councillor Julie Young, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've lost count of the times I sat in budget setting full council meetings in a nearby authority, listening to the Conservative leader at that time saying that we are the party of low taxation and we leave more of your hard-earned cash in your pocket. Well, Mr. Mayor, how things have changed. The ideology of being a low-tax party has gone firmly out of the window, and taxation at every level is set to rise. We face a cost of living crisis, the scale of which we have not known before, and instead of coming to the aid of hard-pressed families, this government and this administration want to add to the burdens of our families, many of whom face a choice between heating or eating. You will remember Robert Jenrick's words to local councils to spend what is needed to support people through the pandemic. Mr. Mayor, it is time the government backed local councils, restoring funding levels instead of expecting this authority to hit the depleted pockets of Colchester residents. This government wasted billions of pounds on public money on contracts issued to people who had little experience or ability to deliver. Those contracts failed, and now once again, the little people have to pay the price. Mr. Mayor, following the financial crash, Colchester residents endured 10 years of austerity, where we saw services stripped away, and it's no surprise that suicide is at record levels and Colchester feature in the top 3. Those years of austerity, cuts to social care and health services mean the safety net of a decent and supportive society is less than threadbare. The Trestle Trust recently tweeted the fact that half of people referred to the food bank are in debt to the government. Lorraine was quoted, "If it was feed the kids or pay the council tax, I obviously chose the kids." They point to the link between debt and mental health and say the social security system sets people out to fail. So after 12 years of abject failure, where government borrowing is at record levels, taxation is at its highest level in 70 years, energy prices set to double, we cannot, in all honesty, support a budget where more pressure is added to local families by agreeing a council tax rise. We have reserves for a very good reason, Mr. Mayor, to act as a buffer, to be called upon when needed, and in my lifetime, we haven't had a crisis as deep as the one we currently face. Expecting Colchester council taxpayers to uplift the budget of Essex County Council, Essex Police and Colchester Borough Council while this government wastes our taxes on dodgy contracts is simply not fair. Rocketing food prices, unmanageable energy bills and tax rises are the epitome of levelling down, and I'm not prepared to add to the burdens that people in my community face. Following the cut in universal credit, I experienced unprecedented calls for food bank vouchers, where people sadly have to rely on the goodwill of neighbours and strangers to prevent them from starving to death. Mr. Mayor, I commend the amendment as set out by the Alliance opposition, which will provide a small degree of relief for residents and a little extra to those in greatest hardship.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Laws next, please.
Mr. Mayor, this is a budget for culture. This is a budget for business, and this is a budget for heritage. For many years, people in Colchester have been warned that a Conservative-led administration would see ideological cuts. And yet here we are in an in-house sports centre. Here we are with an in-house run waste and recycling service. And here we are spending nearly £1 million on our heritage for the benefit of all in the borough of Colchester. And it is a Conservative-led administration that has extended the grants to our art partners, who I know are very, very happy with us for doing that. So the dogma is not really very credible. Perhaps it's because of our financial competence that the government has recognised us in awarding nearly £20 million in urban regeneration grants that will see benefits for all. Renewed improvements in public realms, such as the long-anticipated St Nicholas Square. We're going to see a restored Grade 1 listed Saxon watchtower in Holy Trinity Church and a wonderful community facility to come as a consequence of it. And the biggest problem in Colchester since 1987, or one of the biggest ones since 1987, what on earth to do with Jumbo? We've finally got a solution, and it is this Conservative-led administration that has fired the starting gun for that, to get a lift in Jumbo. So whether you are rich or poor, pink or purple, you can get to the top and see those views. And I'm very proud of my small part in that. And it's not just about the pretty things to look at. We're also putting skills at the core of our soon-to-be-released economic strategy, which is why we're investing in the Wilson Marriage Centre. And it's why we are supporting the ongoing efforts to build a cluster of new tech businesses in Queen Street with accelerated 5G and super fast broadband. This is a sensible, Conservative-led budget, and it's value for money, and I urge you all to support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Laws. Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It'll surprise no one that I'm speaking in support of our budget and not in support of the amendments to it. Personally, I think it's a difficult budget to disagree with, and I'd be surprised and frankly quite disappointed if opposition members felt strongly enough to vote against it. We're all wrestling with similar issues, and we must all decide on our own priorities. With this budget, we tackle some of mine. We will continue to fund an additional enforcement officer. As I said at last night's scrutiny committee, enforcement is the bedrock of a strong development management service. Fixing the enforcement shortfall by adding to the team was the first decision I made when I took on this portfolio, and one we will maintain as long as we have control. Last year, we took on a planning apprentice, a decision one or two members criticised at the time. I'm delighted to say that our apprentice is so good at the job, they have been promoted to a permanent planning assistant role, and will now be creating another apprentice position. This budget enables us to do that. It is a really positive way to nurture and grow our service, one I trust members of all groups will support. We will fund a development constraints audit, which will start drilling down into the £330 million infrastructure deficit forecast for Colchester come 2036, and begin to make serious inroads to addressing it. It will give us some ammunition to debate housing numbers with any government, and it will enable us to make the case for leveraging infrastructure funding from land value, where it ought to be coming from. We will invest in developing design codes for Colchester. I think we're all fed up with identikit housing on homogenous developments. The government has been really supportive following the Building Beautiful Commission report. It's no longer about delivering homes in the right places, it's about delivering new communities within beautiful places. We're now going to grasp this opportunity with an emphasis on engagement with our communities to explicitly set out our design expectations which must be met to secure planning approval in Colchester. Design codes will differ from community to community and serve to reinforce local distinctiveness, and they will end the legacy of substandard design for future generations. Working with our Essex County Council partners, stakeholders and local communities, we will be taking a holistic approach to master planning the town centre, building on the local plan, strategic plan and town deal to ensure that Colchester not only survives but positively thrives. And finally, it gets an integrated transport hub that includes a bus station. This is just a snapshot of the positive things this budget enables within my portfolio. Despite the challenges we all face, it's a really positive budget for our borough. Please support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Hogg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shall be supporting Councillor King's amendment, which sets out to provide encouragement, relief and support to many. I support the amendments for very personal and local reasons, i.e. what I see and what I know working in St Anne's and St John's. Previously, I spoke to this council about the 52 families being supported by Councillor Chua and I through the Oak Tree Centre, using our locality budget plus grants from organisations to support these 52 families. And of course, using the knowledge of our 5 local schools who identified the 52 families and 155 children. Whilst we continue to support families through the schools, we also have identified families outside of this, which takes our total of need of support to over 60 families and 160 children in the Saints in 2022. Can you believe that? The amendment sets out, as I said, to provide encouragement, relief and support to many. That I hope we'll do here tonight. I support the amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hogg. Next one is Councillor Nissen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're in the midst of other very real crises, as well as the COVID pandemic, which has not disappeared. The cost of living crisis, which is disproportionately impacting lower income families. It's not true to say that we're all in this together, and as elected representatives of Colchester residents, it's our duty to ensure we put them at the heart of every decision we make. The mental health crisis, for many, has been exacerbated by financial difficulties amid a decade of austerity. Another crisis we all face is the climate and ecological emergency. Again, this disproportionately affects the poorer amongst us. This collective amendment to the Conservative and Independent budget goes some way to assisting Colchester residents. Mr. Mayor, as is the case in towns across England, tens of thousands of Colchester residents are facing unprecedented rises in their energy bills, predicted to be on average £700 per year per household. Increasing council tax at this time could very likely push Colchester families into financial dire straits. Myself and cross-party colleagues visited a Colchester food bank, and the extent of need was heartbreaking. As the world's 6th richest country, no one here should be going hungry or experiencing food insecurity. Colchester Food Bank is bracing itself to support over 30,000 residents this year. As their own management said, more and more frontline workers are now relying on their service, the heroes who got us through 2 years of pandemic. We're all anxiously awaiting the decision on the funding of bus service grants, which may result in loss of services and residents having to stay home as they cannot afford to travel. These factors will have a hugely negative effect on mental health, isolation, and their paid work, as some may struggle to afford their bus fares. Yet affordable public transport is crucial for reducing air pollution and traffic in Colchester and beyond. In addition, England has some of the worst insulated homes in Europe. This results in more energy being needed to heat the home. The scrapping of the Green Homes grant has come at a dreadful time when many are in fuel poverty and cannot afford to do this. Colchester Borough Council Warm Homes project is good work by our officers to mitigate some impact of this. Notwithstanding, the economic and ecological repercussions of our inadequate insulation are substantial. We need to bear in mind that only 12% of council tax goes directly to Colchester Borough Council. A substantial amount goes to Essex County Council to pay for, amongst other things, fixing potholes, roads and care provision. Yet one of the most frequent tasks I undertake as a borough councillor is reporting potholes. Not to criticise the hard work of Essex County Council in any way, but it will be unpalatable for Colchester residents to swallow this proposed council tax increase, given their frustrations with the state of Colchester's roads and pavements. In the same way as colleagues are pushing for control of Colchester roads to return to Colchester, so too I would urge our colleagues to support this amendment. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Nissen. Councillor Gerard Oxford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to say very much, but I think nearly everybody in this room, if not everybody, would prefer not to have to pay any increases for anything. But reality is different to that. The amendment, in my view, is not sensible because it's putting £1 in a pocket today and taking 2 or 3 out for every year for the next 5 years. It's a minimum of 1.7 million over 5 years worse off this council would be. And that's assuming there are no further rises. And we all know there will be. It's a similar situation to PFAs. It looks good on paper to start with, and you get something and you get ripped off later and paying a fortune. Council has already got a very good service that directs residents to sources of support. So we don't need any extra putting into that because they are excellent at their job. So from my perspective, there's a saying that you get nout for nout. And I think this rise, relatively small rise, in the long term is sensible because it doesn't put the burden down the tracks and make things 10 times worse next year and the year after and the year after that and go on and so on. Thank you very much. I will support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oxford. Our next speaker is Councillor Barber, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's never easy to raise taxation. I don't like it. But I'm looking at the budget information in front of me, and my concern, particularly with the amendment, is that by drawing on reserves now, we risk compromising services in the future if we do not increase this modest level of council tax. Councillor King points out how he dislikes increasing tax. So I thought, while listening to the debate, I would check how much Councillor King has increased tax during his time as portfolio holder for resources. In 2019, 2.97%. In 2020, 2.6%. And in 2021, 2.53%. All of those increases are higher than the proposal today. So I want to thank Councillor Lissamore for slowing the increase in council tax increases that we've seen at this authority over the last few years under Councillor King's stewardship. And just for luck, Councillor Corey rose it in his last budget by 2.75% in 2018. My concern, Mr. Mayor, is that services would be compromised in a few years' time if this modest increase does not go ahead. But I'm also delighted to see that right now, our frontline services are being protected with no cuts. More importantly, we're seeing efficiencies in services delivered as well, because why not deliver the same and improve services for less money if we can, so we can invest elsewhere? And I'm really pleased to see in two areas the council is investing money, waste and planning, because lest we not forget, they are two of our key statutory functions. An increase in greening, an increase in some of the neighbourhood services, double services there, so many services, and also an increase in planning enforcement, because that is really crucial to a lot of my residents, to make sure that developments and also some of the smaller works such as extensions that do really impact people's day-to-day lives, they're done correctly. Mr. Mayor, these are difficult times, and as I said at the County Council, there is no blueprint for developing a budget in these times. It's a completely unprecedented situation. But by keeping tax as low as possible now, we can also ensure that our reserves are held steady too through this budget. And in doing so, we can make sure the services that protect the most vulnerable, such as our welfare provisions, are kept up as well. So in 3 years' time, they're not compromised because of a use of reserves today and the freezing in council tax. So, Mr. Mayor, as good Conservatives, we have put forward here a sustainable, sensible budget by focusing on supporting the most vulnerable, because that's what modern conservatism is about, investing through an ambitious capital programme to level up, creating jobs, because jobs are the best way to generate economic prosperity, and make our town, make something we can be proud of again, because you see in the comments online, people feel this is not a town they could be proud of after neglect of 13 years of the Liberal Democrats and Labour. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. We next have Councillor Cox, please.
Thank you very much. So I think there's much to commend in this budget, but like others on this side of the hall, I'd like to speak in favour of Councillor King's amendment. And people have given various reasons for supporting it. For me, the reasons for supporting it are that the proposed increase won't deliver the desired outcome, will have a disproportionate impact on the poorest, and will obscure the bigger but very necessary debate about local government finance. And my view on this is shaped by recent research by the Institute of Fiscal Studies, which assessed the implications of council tax increases ahead of the spending review last autumn. And their researchers, for whom I have a lot of time, concluded that relying on council tax to deal with funding pressures is unlikely to be sustainable. So I'm thinking about the bigger picture here. More specifically, the IFS found that council tax increases are unlikely to be sufficient to meet councils' costs over the next 2 years, given the continuing need for additional COVID-related spending. So we're in unprecedented times here. Also, they pointed out that English councils currently face a 2.7 billion funding gap, a gap that could be addressed not by increases in council tax, but by a fresh approach to government grant funding to those councils, including ours. So I'm going to keep it brief. I'm supporting the amendment because I believe that the Conservative-led administration here should not be putting up council tax for our residents at this point in time when so many are facing particular hardships. Instead, they should be putting pressure on the Conservative government to restore fairer funding to our and other local authorities after years of deep and very unfair cuts. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, could I just make a point of clarity, please? Because government grants have been referred to a few times, and just a reminder for councillors that that is funded by taxpayers, the same taxpayers who live in Colchester Borough as well. I think it's just important to remind members. Thank you.
I think her point was that the government set that support, and it's up to the councillors to ask for more if they feel it's appropriate. Anyway, the next speaker is Councillor Crowe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Lissamore and her officers for producing such a robust budget that not only takes us through next year, but sets the Council on a secure footing for future years. Since last May, this administration has increased efficiencies to commit to additional spending. In my portfolio, this has included £61,000 on greening projects, including making money available for blossom circles, extra plug planting and seeding. There's been £63,000 to support residents reuse, recycle and including litter picking, group engagement and support. Litter engagement campaigns, litter bin optimisation policies, trialling of smart bins, employment of an additional operative, and we put in place an actual bin policy for the first time ever. We've been able to greenlight around £1 million of capital investment in our waste depot to cope with population growth in Colchester and modern regulations. This includes a new weighbridge, along with plans approved for a new barn to replace the decrepit baling shed. This has also included creating showers and toilets for our female workers, new showers for the men, and improvements to the restroom and fire alarm upgrade, amongst other improvements, making a better and safer working environment for our staff. We've also invested £24,000 to improve our multi-storey car parks. We've undertaken structural work in St Mary's, where we're creating wider parking bays to make it easier to park and get in and out of modern cars, which have got bigger over the years since the car park was built. In addition, there are decorative works to make using the car park a more pleasant experience. We've unveiled the Council's first EV charging points in Prairie Street car park, with plans to roll out more in our car parks across the borough. And finally, we've purchased our first hybrid and EV vehicles, and in the coming days, Helpline will have 4 hybrid cars at their disposal and 6 electric vans have been ordered for waste and recycling services. And with reference to Councillor Gocher's proposal that the Council employs its own dedicated in-house ecology officer, I wanted to address that. We take the protection of the environment, ecology and biodiversity extremely seriously, and other authorities look to us as an example to follow. So it's essential that we draw on the best advice available at any given time to ensure the Council's activities have a positive impact. Our proposed budget will enable this work to continue, for example, via specialist officers in neighbourhood services, planning, the climate change and sustainability team, and consultants where necessary. This works extremely well for us. Outsourcing to consultants gives us the greatest possible flexibility by being able to bring in specific skill sets and knowledge sets as and when we need them. So I will be supporting this budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crowe. And our final speaker is Councillor Scordis, and I apologise for not putting you further up the list.
Oh, very naughty, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I have to say it was quite amusing to listen to Councillor Lissamore rave about the work of the current Conservative administration and go on the attack. I think all we've seen is diver and miscommunication. I still remember when portfolio holders didn't know what responsibilities they covered. Residents see our streets getting dirtier despite a Conservative pledge to clean up the town, and that was stated by no less than Mr. Orton himself, but also noticeable to all of us. 0 prosecutions have been made on fly tipping, and our neighbourhood teams are overstretched and under-resourced. It's amazing that the Conservatives get away with this image of being a low-tax party. As Councillor Fox has rightly pointed out, the Conservatives have supported tax rises at County Hall and for the Police and Fire Commissioner. Councillor Barber might hate tax rises, but this will be his second one in a month, so that's pretty impressive. Labour voted against all of these and is going to hopefully vote against this. Instead, residents are once again paying more for less. Also interesting to see Councillor Willits and Lissamore play the anti-housing card. Now, they know full well that it's the Conservative government that sets the national housing targets and is overturning our own planning committee decisions like Alumno. But what do? Blame someone else, offer false hope and scaremongering in their leaflets, deny all responsibility. In my own ward, food bank usage is going through the roof as energy bills begin to rise and wages remain stagnant. Many face eviction as landlords are still looking to sell up. I am genuinely terrified for many families in Colchester who face a decision not only between heating and eating, but now paying the rent. I want to personally thank everyone at Colchester Food Bank and those who donate what they can to help others. Residents will rightly ask why they're paying more for the same service, or in some cases, what feels like a reduced service. And also, the less money people have in their pockets means the less money spent in our town centre and local businesses, means fewer funds accrued through business rates and rents for the council, and it will eventually mean fewer jobs. This is a budget that risks leading to this catastrophic scenario.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scordis. You were the last speaker, but Councillor Goss has decided he'd like to say something as well. So, Councillor Goss, please.
3 minutes of glorious Goss commentary. You can dress things up as well as you like, but this is a pretty average budget that, frankly, isn't good enough to vote for. And Councillor King's amendments were, I think, fair given the current climate. Every day on Facebook, for those that do social media, you see people putting copies of their energy bills where they've suddenly doubled overnight. You see concern from residents that are worried about how they're going to pay for fuel, because that hasn't been mentioned, but it's going up at the pumps all the time. The cost of living is over 5.5% now, with inflation going up. So every penny matters to residents, whether it's saving a few quid by freezing council tax. Everything helps. As I write out food bank vouchers, I can see the stress that are put on families that cannot feed their families, and therefore they have to turn to the food bank. And as Councillor Nissen mentioned earlier, we all visited and saw for ourselves the real work that goes on in our communities that actually is hidden. It's very good for Councillor Lismore to mention allotments. Maybe I should remind her the amount of times that I had to mention Kirby Drive in Mile End, where it was handed across from the developers in June, but didn't actually open till December. Now, that was on her watch. Can't blame that on anybody else, I'm afraid. Allotments have been with you for nearly a year. So you can't blame previous people, because I brought this to the public attention numerous times. So please do not try and mislead on that. And the town is dirtier than it's ever been. The A12 is disgusting, absolutely filthy. When I was in charge, I handed you a clean A12 because I invested in getting it cleaned up, and now it is filthy. It's one of the biggest complaints we get from residents as they drive down it. I've highlighted the pavements that weren't being cleaned. What about the Karcher pressure washer that was locked up behind the town hall for months and months because we had no vehicle to tow it around the town? So it just sat there. So that's why the pavements didn't get cleaned. The recycling rates have gone down. They were at a high of 56%. They're now languishing around 52%. And as Councillor Scordis mentioned, the neighbourhoods team is struggling, really struggling to deliver basic service of emptying bins. And all the disappearing litter bins that I've raised, well, they haven't come back. So we've had cuts to litter bins that have disappeared. They've still not been put back, despite promises. So we can dress this budget up for what it is, but what we've really got is dirtier streets, staff that are under extreme pressure to deliver basic services that they are really struggling to do, and Karcher pressure washers that just sit behind the town hall that's now being towed by a rental vehicle. What the hell are we doing spending taxpayers' money on a rental vehicle? I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goss. We've now heard the debate, and we're going to have named votes on the two amendments and the main motion. So I'd like to invite Councillor King to sum up, please. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everybody in the chamber for a spirited discussion. I may not mention every name, and I hope colleagues will understand. We've everything from an attack on what looks farcical in terms of the current administration. The glorious Goss pointed out that every penny hurts, no, every penny helps as well. And he handed an A12 that was clean, and that's gone. There were positives in the conversation around the chamber on which we all can agree. And Councillor Cox rightly acknowledged that there is much in the budget that members will, as is always the case, support. But much of this discussion has been around the negatives. It's been a conversation around loony proposals, according to Councillor Willits, who wants us to join in on an anti-tax raising crusade. I'm up for that. And so were most of us on this side of the chamber, because all the taxes you mentioned are set by central government. You didn't mention national insurance, which is going up soon. So as soon as you're ready, I'm off to go up to Whitehall and start the march. If you could be first, I will be second. Many of the colleagues here pointed to the vulnerabilities that they see amongst their residents and amongst those they know and those they see. And some of that was moving. Vulnerability, Dave Harris said, comes in many forms. Councillor Fox talked to the triple whammy. Councillor Mike Hogg talked to the 60 families, the 160 children that in just one small part of Colchester had to be helped. And many members have talked to what they, and we all know, whatever the political positions we take, that there is more trouble coming down the pipe towards us all. And in times of trouble, it's the people who are most vulnerable who will be challenged the most. And it's our duty, as many members in this conversation have pointed out, to make the most of the opportunity of budget setting to acknowledge those pressures. Not to trumpet things that we started and to say that they're delivering them. I'm up for being positive. Now's the moment to look at the negatives of the circumstances, the reality of where we're at, which many members have touched upon. And I can only applaud the conversation. Be concerned about the blindness that comes with the change in administration, and thank all their members for their contribution.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. And now we'll have Councillor Lissimore to sum up for 3 minutes as well, before we go to the vote.
Thank you. I would like to thank Councillor King and his Lib Dem and Labour colleagues for his amendment to our budget. Yes, it was a difficult call on what rate to set our council tax. We have set nil increases in the past, and we know the knock-on effect that this has on our budgets here at the council. It will cost £320,000 this next year. And what about the next year? And the next year, it's actually 1.7 million over 5 years. That loss goes on forever and ever. So, Councillor King, what would you prefer? A small increase? Or try and recoup the money in other ways? A £100 charge to collect garden waste, a further charge to collect residual waste, or double the charge for a new wheelie bin, or triple the charge for a garden waste sack, because that is the decision that has to be made. Of course, we recognise a huge burden that increases in fuel and basics have had on us all, especially the vulnerable and the just about managing. But landing them with a roundabout increase in cost of services means they're still hit, but hit more, and with ramifications for us as a council due to increased fly tipping, etc. And isn't it easy to ask for no increase when you're not in control? Why did you not do that a year ago when we were already financially suffering from COVID? And I believe we already have a Colchester Emergency Fund, and we continue to support schemes that are already running, such as the Food Bank, Citizens Advice, and our own council tax support scheme. Our own council website has an extremely simplified checklist to get access to financial help for those who need it. The Community 360 Hub will give residents a place to go for help from all different agencies, not just the council, and we have supported this from the start. Crisis Reaction Service, again, we have this already in the Community 360 Hub, a real place, not online, not virtual, that anyone can go to for help. No one knew what it meant when we went into our first lockdown. Our Conservative government gave us grants that secured our financial basis and enabled schemes to continue, kept businesses open, and has saved us from digging deeper into our reserves. And the main reason we are planning to still use some of this reserve is to give officers of this council a pay rise, particularly those on the lower ends of the pay scale. We want to do everything we can to thank them and help them deal with outside inflationary pressures. And our own use of reserves has been helped by better than forecasted take-up of sports facilities and better council tax collections, thanks to concentrated efforts from this cabinet and officers. We discussed our council tax rise in detail, and it was with great sadness that we had to increase it. However, whilst inflation is costing our residents, it is also costing us as a council. And if we wish to continue to be ambitious, we have to be financially realistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lissimore. I'd like to ask Mr. Weavers now to administer a named vote on Councillor King's main amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Barber.
Against.
Against. Councillor Barton.
For.
4. Councillor Bentley. Against. Councillor Bourne.
4.
4. Councillor Burrows.
4.
4. Councillor Buston. Against. Councillor Chapman. Against. Councillor Chillingworth. Against. Councillor Chua. 4. Councillor Coleman.
4.
4. Councillor Cope.
4.
4. Councillor Corey.
4.
4. Councillor Cox. 4. Councillor Crowe.
Against.
Against. Councillor Dundas.
Against.
Against. Councillor Ellis.
Against.
Against. Councillor Fox. 4. Councillor Gocher.
4.
4. Councillor Goss.
4.
4. Councillor Hagan.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hayter. Against. Councillor Hazel.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hogg.
4.
4. Councillor Jowers. Against. Councillor King.
4.
4. Councillor Laws.
Against.
Against. Councillor Leatherdale.
Against.
Against. Councillor Lilly.
4.
4. Councillor Lissimore.
Against.
Against. Councillor Loveland.
Against.
Against. Councillor Luxford Vaughan.
4.
4. Councillor McLean. Against. Councillor Mannion.
Against.
Against. Councillor McCarthy.
4.
4. Councillor Moore.
Against.
Against. Councillor Nissen.
4.
4. Councillor Beverley Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Gerard Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Philip Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Pearson.
4.
4. Councillor Scordis.
4.
4. Councillor Scott Patel.
4.
4. Councillor Tate.
Against.
Against. Councillor Warnes.
4.
4. Councillor Whitehead.
4.
4. Councillor Willits.
Against.
Against. Councillor Wood.
Against.
Against. Councillor Julie Young.
4.
4. The Deputy Mayor.
4.
4. The Mayor.
I'd just like to clarify that the Mayor and Deputy Mayor are meant to be non-political, so I will be voting against this to match the Deputy Mayor's vote.
Against. Thank you. The total of the vote is 24 for the amendment and 26 against. Mr. Mayor, the amendment is lost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weavers. We'll now go on to Councillor Gocher's amendment, but before the vote, we'll let Councillor Gocher sum up for 3 minutes, followed by Councillor Lissimore to sum up again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recognise there's lots of positives in the budget, and it is disappointing that the amendments weren't accepted, because I think they add to the budget rather than criticise it in any way. In terms of the amendment that I move, I move it because I identify a problem. As much as people say that the existing way of doing things is working, we have had examples where we as members needed, I feel, more advice on the ecological impact on what we were doing, and we didn't receive it. I mean, I welcome Councillor Willett's comments about overdevelopment, but if we had an ecology officer, they will be able to advise us on the ecological impact on, for example, building over Middlewick ranges, in a way that is an expert opinion coming from somebody who is within our organisation, looking at across the range of things that we do, rather than on this kind of random ad hoc basis we get people in. So I think it is a need that we have. As I said before, we take officer advice on a range of important things that we do. And it just seems to be something that is lacking, that we don't have this in our organisation on the issue of ecology. So I hope that that members will consider carefully and support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gocher. Councillor Lissimore, 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank Councillor Gocher for his addition to the budget. However, think that this is a duplicate role, as we already have some excellent officers within the council who do this role already, and look at every policy and every scheme to ensure that it is ecologically as sound as possible. And I'm afraid I do not agree with him that this post would become financially sustainable after 1 year. From my experience, I've certainly seen more cost increases when a scheme is more ecologically sound. It increases, unfortunately, not decreases. Sometimes there is a reason that a certain product is used. For example, we have wraps for tree guards, which are now biodegradable, and so they should be. I've spent many a time at Westlands Country Park with a Stanley knife ripping off the plastic guards of the trees there because they do not degrade. However, the biodegradable ones cost more money, not less. They shouldn't do, it's wrong, but unfortunately that does seem to be the pattern when you introduce something that is more ecologically sound. It shouldn't be, but it is. I therefore cannot vote for his amendment to the main motion and will be voting against, as I do not believe it has a sound financial footing and it is a duplicate role. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lismore. Mr Weavers, can you have a named vote, please, for Mr Gocher's amendment?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Barber.
Against.
Against. Councillor Barton.
For.
For. Councillor Bentley. Against. Councillor Bourne.
For.
For. Councillor Burrows.
For.
For. Councillor Buston.
Against.
Against. Councillor Chapman. Against. Councillor Chillingworth.
Against.
Against. Councillor Chua. For. Councillor Coleman.
For.
For. Councillor Cope.
For.
For. Councillor Corey.
For.
For. Councillor Cox. For. Councillor Crowe.
Against.
Against. Councillor Dundas.
Against.
Against. Councillor Ellis.
Against.
Against. Councillor Fox.
For.
For. Councillor Gocher.
For.
For. Councillor Goss.
For.
For. Councillor Hagan.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hayter. Against. Councillor Hazel.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hogg.
For.
For. Councillor Jowers. Against. Councillor King.
For.
For. Councillor Laws.
Against.
Against. Councillor Leatherdale.
Against.
Against. Councillor Lilly.
For.
For. Councillor Lissimore.
Against.
Against. Councillor Loveland. Against. Councillor Luxford Vaughan.
For.
For. Councillor McLean. Against. Councillor Mannion.
Against.
Against. Councillor McCarthy.
For.
For. Councillor Moore.
Against.
Against. Councillor Nissen.
For.
For. Councillor Beverley Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Gerard Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Philip Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Pearson.
For.
For. Councillor Scordis.
For.
For. Councillor Scott Patel.
For.
For. Councillor Tate.
Against.
Against. Councillor Warnes. For. Councillor Whitehead.
For.
For. Councillor Willits.
Against.
Against. Councillor Wood. Against. Councillor Julie Young.
For.
For. The Deputy Mayor.
Not voting.
Not voting. And the Mayor.
Not voting.
Not voting. Thank you. The result of the vote is 23 in favour, 25 against, 2 abstentions. The amendment is lost, Mr Mayor.
Right, thank you very much, Mr Weavers. Well, councillors, we've been going for about 90 minutes. I think it's a good time for a break. So, oh, have we? Shall we vote for the budget? I was just making sure you're all awake. Right, so in that case, councillors, you need to come back, sorry. You need, yep. We've got 6 minutes of summing up and then, thank you. My apologies. Right. Councillor Lissimore, you have 3 minutes and you have everybody's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. I will speak really quickly. I would like to thank all the speakers tonight on what has been an excellent debate. Councillor Fox, just to clarify, I think it was your past administration who put a gin bar actually inside the town hall. Perhaps you don't remember it. It was perhaps before your time. And it wasn't about by the time perhaps you were elected, but just to remind you of that. I'm afraid the Lib Dem amendment shows they're back to what they've tried to do in the past, spend reserves until you're on the verge of bankruptcy. I'm probably one of the only ones here remembers when the Lib Dems and Labour were last in charge of the county council 15 years ago. I'm sorry, we've been silent whilst
Yes, shall we
opposition
respect
have
each
been
other?
speaking.
We've been good up till now. Thank you. Councillor Lismore.
Thank you. I'm probably one of the only ones here remembers when the Lib Dems and Labour were last in charge of the county council over 15 years ago. Their spend policy left the council 7 days away from serious financial collapse. It's a balance, there is no doubt, that many have on how much savings to have for that rainy day. But a council's reserves are carefully calculated, and spending too much of it risks so much, too much. But we are here tonight with a Conservative government recognising a prudent, entrepreneurial, Conservative administration. We have shown as an administration we can work together with others, especially Essex County Council, not fight them and criticise them, to get the best for our town. The Essex Business Rates Pool has gained us £200,000. Our new homes bonus was more generous than expected, with an announcement of nearly 2 million just before Christmas. Excellent council tax collection rates, back to pre-COVID levels of 99%. And of course, our town deal with huge investment in areas that have been a problem for years. Our beloved jumbo water tower is finally going to receive the love and care it deserves as an icon of our town. The Greenstead community buildings will leave the 1970s design rut and will be fit to serve that great community in the 21st century. Even St Nicholas House, which has been unloved for years, even strewn with fruit boxes and rotten oranges, will now be a proud addition to our townscape. We want Colchester to be the greatest town or city it can possibly be, to thrive, to educate, to blossom, to be entrepreneurial, to be proud. I move this motion to you as a further step to ensure our borough is the best it can possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lismore. And now Mr Weavers will have a named vote on the remaining budget.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So it's a name vote on motion B as unamended. Councillor Barber, 4. Sorry, Councillor Barber.
Oh!
How did I predict that?
The mask has slipped. 4.
4. Councillor Barton.
Against.
Against. Councillor Bentley. 4. Councillor Bourne.
Against.
Against. Councillor Burrows.
Against.
Against. Councillor Buston.
4.
4. Councillor Chapman. 4. Councillor Chillingworth.
4.
4. Councillor Chewer. Against. Councillor Coleman.
Against.
Against. Councillor Cope.
Against.
Against. Councillor Corey.
Against.
Against. Councillor Cox. Against. Councillor Crowe.
4.
4. Councillor Dundas.
4.
4. Councillor Ellis.
4.
4. Councillor Fox.
Against.
Against. Councillor Gocher.
Against.
Against. Councillor Goss.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hagan.
4.
4. Councillor Hayter. 4. Councillor Hazel.
4.
4. Councillor Hogg.
Against.
Against. Councillor Jowers. 4. Councillor King.
Against.
Against. Councillor Laws.
4.
4. Councillor Leatherdale.
4.
4. Councillor Lilly. Against. Councillor Lissimore.
4.
4. Councillor Loveland. 4. Councillor Luxford Vaughan.
Against.
Against. Councillor McLean. 4. Councillor Mannion.
4.
4. Councillor McCarthy.
Against.
Against. Councillor Moore.
4.
4. Councillor Nissen.
Sorry, against.
Against. Councillor Beverley Oxford.
4.
4. Councillor Gerard Oxford.
4.
4. Councillor Philip Oxford.
4.
4. Councillor Pearson.
Against.
Against. Councillor Scordis.
Against.
Against. Councillor Scott Patel.
Against.
Against. Councillor Tate.
For.
For. Councillor Warnes.
Against.
Against. Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
Against. Councillor Willits.
For.
For. Councillor Wood. For. Councillor Julie Young.
Against.
Against. The Deputy Mayor.
Point of explanation in answer to the Mayor's earlier comments. I'm not voting on this because I'm been whipped by the Labour group, nor because I'm Deputy Mayor, but because I'm a councillor for Greensted Ward. And so this vote is for the people in my ward who are struggling and suffering, and that's why I'm voting against.
Against. The Mayor.
And I believe it's a prerogative of the Mayor to ensure the council has a budget for the ensuing year. So I have to vote for.
For. Thank you. The result of the vote, therefore, is 26 voting in favour, 24 voting against. The motion is carried, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, Mr. Weavers. And councillors, you may now have your 10-minute break. Thank you. Councillors, councillors, it's 8 o'clock, and it's awfully nice to see you all talking and chatting and enjoying yourselves, but we do have a little bit more business to do. Excellent. I think most of us are here now. Thank you. So we're on 7.2, which is resetting the capital programme and capital strategy. And I'd like to invite Councillor Lissimore, who hopefully has had a drink to recover from all the speaking, to move motion C, please.
Thank you very much. I move that the recommendations contained in draft minute 623 of the Cabinet meeting of the 26th of January 2022 be approved and adopted. I won't speak for very long on this. We've had an absolute excellent debate this evening, but I'd just like to bring the room's attention to just some of the projects. Rowan House. It's very important that our own council buildings are as green as they possibly can be, and this will dramatically reduce the carbon footprint of the building and of this council. Councillor Crowe touched on it earlier, which was some of the improvements to the Shrub End Depot, making it more pleasant and safer for those who work there. As a female operative, it's not very nice to not have a shower or to share the men's showers. So it was vitally important that we make sure that that depot is as safe and as nice as it can possibly be for the operatives that work there. The public realm schemes are little parts of our town that we've tried to tweak for decades, and we've never really been able to find the answers. Balkan Gate, Holy Trinity Square, Sir Isaac's Walk. I think the investment in those areas is going to improve our town dramatically. And of course, the heart of Greensted, that I spoke about before. What an opportunity. It really is. So I'd like to thank officers again for the continued work that they do. They have done the most excellent work getting to where we are on these projects and the continued work that carries on. But I put the amendment, the motion to the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lissimore. And I can now throw the debate open to the floor. Sorry? Oh, we've got Councillor King followed by Councillor Dundas, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lissimore. It's really good that we can agree, isn't it? It's good to see a great capital programme. It's good to see ambition for change, and it's good to see, as you've described them, Councillor Lissimore, a set of projects that I will just mildly say certainly are a shared responsibility across the chamber. I think tonight's been interesting for how we all, and it is the nature of these things, we'll say, well, that's mine, that's ours, but actually it is ours in the bigger sense of this. This is a capital programme endorsed by the chamber against a strategic plan endorsed by the chamber. So for my part and for, I hope, my colleagues, we can say that we are supportive of what we see here. And that's in the tradition of how we worked before, which is to accept that in any one year, there are circumstances and challenges for the delivery of these projects. But as long as we continue to reset the programme as here, continue to provide good project management and resources needed, then we should, across the chamber, continue to stand behind what is, frankly, for a borough of our size, a really extraordinary programme. Much of it delivered or near delivery at a point of maturity where we can all talk about great public realm coming. We can all talk about a town deal in which we've all played a part coming through, and we can all talk about how we might do things which are better for every aspect of life here, the quality of life for our people inside our own organisations in Rowan House and for the residents we're here to support. So it's a great programme. It's a collective one. I and we stand behind it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Councillor Dundas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think after our short break, I think it's nice to come back with something which I hope and believe we can all get behind. I will just mention, though, going back to the budget, we shouldn't forget, though, that the capital budget does rely on a robust revenue budget, because capital doesn't come free. It impacts the revenue budget. It impacts the medium-term financial forecast, particularly with minimum revenue provision. So if we do have too big a gap in the MTFF, long-term, our capital programme will be constrained. So it is important that we don't just look at it as a sort of completely separate thing. As Councillor King said, I mean, I remember the start of the town deal. I remember us all sort of sitting in the grand jury room, I think, sort of staring at blank pieces of paper, thinking, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with it? And we've gone from there to a really good place, I think, and that has come about from a lot of hard work by a lot of people, both within the council and outside the council, and I would like to thank them all for that. I do have to mention the government. I know we've had some criticism of the government this evening, but I do think we do have to all agree that this is a significant investment in Colchester directly by the government, nearly £20 million, and I do think we have to all give them credit for that. In addition to that, of course, we have the £2.3 million in the Estate Regeneration Fund going to Grinstead. As well as the Town Deal Fund, it's not all about the Town Deal Fund. There are some projects in there which are directly funded by the council. I know Councillor Lissimore mentioned the waste service depot. That's been hanging around for quite a while. It's been really good to press the green light on that button, because it really affects the welfare of our workforce there. I'm also really pleased to say that although it isn't directly in here, we have taken the decision and will be bringing forward the decision to finally start work on the chapel in the cemetery. That's been, I think, it's sort of been sitting on the books for many, many years with, and I'm not criticising anybody here, I do understand why it's difficult, no decision being made, so I'm really pleased to press the green light on that. But this is a really good set of projects. They will start to be delivered soon. We've had one already, Balkan Gates, and Nicholas Square is starting in April. We should be drawing down the money April, May, and getting on with it, so I commend it to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Dundas. Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I too welcome the fact that we continue to have a good capital programme. However, I am slightly concerned. The previous administration, as everyone is aware, established the Amphora group of companies to be innovative, creative, an exciting way of overcoming the strictures that were set by Conservative government, to finance exciting and much needed capital projects for the residents of Colchester. And most of those, if not all of those, in fact, are included in this capital programme still. Yet, and Councillor Dundas alluded to, the paragraph 6.1 and 6.2 in the report, that government may now be intending to restrict how we can fund those projects going forward, and the impact that it may have on the minimum reserve provision. And I just wonder what representations, because I feel that we've been silent, what representations the administration has actually made to central government to ensure that the proposals don't actually come to pass, because that will further restrict our ability to deliver the capital programme in front of us. I'm also slightly concerned, looking at the detail of the capital programme, that there's no explanation for the significant increases in the revised costings for St Mark's Community Centre, a 20% increase, Rowan House refurbishment, a 27% increase in costs, and Colchester Northern Gateway, a 33% increase in costs. Is this the Conservative administration incapable of controlling those capital costs?
Do we have any other speakers? In which case I'll ask Councillor Lissimore to sum up for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The minimum reserve provision is a concern. I have spoken many times to officers with regards to the response that we have given, and we have given a very, very robust response to government. What the officers have also done as well is they've used their internal networks of meetings to also gauge how other councils are responding, and to ensure that we all work together on this to make sure that we get the best possible outcome for all councils. But I've been very pleased and very confident in our response, because some other councils have not responded at all. It seems to have sort of gone under their radar, and they have not noticed that this has been put forward. So I'm very confident that our response has been as robust as it possibly can be. I would like to thank Councillor King for his comments. It is good that we can all work together and that we can see that these are good schemes that are moving forward. It's been, as I say, a very good evening tonight, and I'd like to put the motion to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lissimore. I think, as there seems to be agreement across the floor, I think we use hands rather than a name vote. So all those in favour, please. I think it's unanimous, which is good for Colchester, isn't it? Thank you. Right, we now move on to 7.3, Councillor Development Policy. I'll sign up to that one. So I'd like to invite Councillor Dundas to move that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the recommendation contained in draft minute 632 of the Cabinet meeting of 26th of January 2022 be approved and adopted. I'm going to speak very, very shortly on this. The Council Development Group, of which I'm a member and others are here, is generally a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not friendly, but it has a good atmosphere, and I think we all have a very positive approach to council development. I think perhaps over the last 2 years, moving to online, it's had a double-edged effect. One perhaps slightly negative in that we don't spend a great deal of time together, which I think does make life slightly more difficult. I think actually us spending time together, particularly across political boundaries, fosters good relations and good conversations. But it's interesting, actually, it's also had a very positive effect on the attendance levels on the member development sessions. Difficult there, where do we go in the future with that? But I won't read out the entire item or the recommended decision, but I think I will just say I recommend it to the council, and I hope it can be approved unanimously.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dundas. Councillor King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the chair of the MDG for the previous 3 years, I'd just like to offer to colleagues that, as described by Councillor Dundas, that's what I've seen with those who've tried to represent each of the parties there. We get to the kind of place that sometimes we wish we might be more often. But there is a sort of side piece here, which is around the ambition or not for support to councillors. I just really applaud the intent. I think there is a challenge for us in a year on to think whether we might go further in terms of eventual standing, Charter Plus, rather than the more usual, but better than no standing that's proposed here. And I would just say one final thing, which is the point about spending time together is not to be underestimated. We had an earlier conversation, remarks about changes in the town hall. Well, that was cross-party and intent to try and make it a little easier for councillors from different groups to spend some time together with each other. And we deserve that kind of support. So I hope that when we take the politics of the budget away, that we might come back to this again and coolly look at what we might do to provide better support for councillors than we do at the moment. There's barely a packet of biscuits and a cup of tea available, as we found out the last meeting here. But I stand behind this, I support it, and I hope colleagues will as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. And we have Councillor Harris online.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting this work of the Member Development Group. I think that I'd like to applaud all councillors that have gone and beyond the FRAD to try and develop themselves and attend the budget meetings and the all the workshops that we've had and the training that we've had in-house and external. I just wanted to say, to make sure that I think we mustn't leave behind those members of the council that work and work long hours, as well as representing their residents, and we must, shouldn't we, do more to ensure that we make available for those members that do work and finish, get back on a late train, etc., of all political parties, to make sure they can and are given the opportunity to attend, Mr. Mayor. And even if that means just looking at a video of the training that we do save and share with members afterwards. And I think that may be a good way in the future to ensure that we all are fully engaged. I fully support the work of the Member Development Group, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Councillor Dundas, do you want 3 minutes to sum up?
I don't think I need 3 minutes to sum up, Mr. Mayor. I think we should move straight to the vote.
Right. So I think we'll have a hand vote again. All those in favour, please.
It's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. We can all learn, can't we? And I believe we go to... Sorry, Andrew. 8 next, isn't it? Yes. Yep. So we now go to questions. Up to 60 minutes, and we have 5 pre-notified questions already. So I'd like to invite Councillor Cox to ask her pre-notified question to Councillor Dundas.
Well, you've caught me on the hop now. I can remember the question. Thank you very much. The question was about the bid we made for the Abro site and whether that was successful. I'm guessing it wasn't successful, but are we able to, and when we'll be able to know more about the successful bid for this really crucial site which borders the Roman Circus? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could you respond, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Cox for pre-notifying the question. As I understand it, we haven't been successful in our bid, which is disappointing. We put in a very competitive bid. We did quite a lot of research on it. I think our team at Amphora did a very good job, and I'm disappointed that we weren't successful. We do not know who was successful. That is still currently confidential. There are rumours floating around, but I'm not going to mention rumours that would be inappropriate. At some point, we would expect the successful bidder to be in contact with our planning department, because we've put in place a very robust SDP, which we will expect them to comply with. So if they have bid too much, then that is their problem, in my opinion. The other part of the question, because fortunately I've got it written in front of me, was could councillors and officers be briefed in confidence on the successful bid? I would suggest that the answer to that is yes, as soon as we actually have some details. So I'm very happy, and officers, you can listen, and these are the instructions that as soon as we've actually got some firm information, could we put that together, please?
Thank you very much. And Councillor Cox, do you have a supplementary?
Not really, just to say it's an absolutely crucial site for the future development of the heritage of our unique asset in that area. So very keen to be actively involved in that. Thanks.
I fully concur.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Julie Young, would you like to ask Councillor Dundas's question?
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Greenstead and Longridge residents are already suffering the consequences of development in tendering up to our border at Sallery Brook, including drainage works our side of the river to facilitate the 145 homes Bellway Homes are building. Can I have the Leader of the Council's assurance that the 1.5 kilometre buffer zone protecting the Salary Brook Local Nature Reserve will be adhered to in the DPD being developed?
Thank you, and thank you for pre-notifying the question. I think in some respects, actually, the question might be better the other way around, because actually, obviously, I know Councillor Young was heavily involved as portfolio holder for the local plan in the development of the Tendering Colchester Border project, and obviously supported it through its implementation in Section 1 of the local plan. The DPD is being developed along the lines of that local plan and will go through the joint committee. As I understand it, probably the recommended option, it's in the published papers now for the committee meeting next Monday, does recommend option 3, which does leave a significant buffer, but that is subject to consultation. So I can't give the absolute assurance as to what will come out of that consultation and what will eventually be decided. What, of course, I would say is that this council, this full council, does have the ultimate say over that DPD and will have to vote for it. So my recommendation is to take a significant amount of interest in the development of that DPD and respond to the consultation, because it is those responses which will shape what we end up with.
Councillor Young, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Young, would you like to ask your second question to Councillor Laws, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support investment in the castle to enable appropriate catering to take place to ensure the to enhance the visitor experience. But do we really need our jewel in our crown, Colchester Castle, converted into a gin bar? If this plan proceeds, how will this be made accessible to all and our historic asset be protected?
Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Thank you for the pre-notified question. Very courteous. Our castle is absolutely incredible. The staff are amazing. They are dynamic. They are approachable. They are knowledgeable. They are friendly. They make the experience really excellent. We have nationally significant artefacts in there, but what we don't have is the ability to have some good coffee and cake, and why not an oyster and some gin? Why not? Why not look at it? I was in scrutiny in it, and I said the comments that we should, in the next capital bid, seriously think about the airspace and what opportunities there are around it. We're not talking about giving JD Wetherspoon's license to run a gin bar on the roof. We're not saying that. But what really bothers me at the moment is that there are parts of the castle that are inaccessible, and that's not fair. So in the next capital bid, we need to be talking about that roof. We need to be talking about a standalone lift that gets people who can't walk up there on that roof. Let's be ambitious. Why not? So I want to reassure people, we're not talking about handing over the castle to be turned into a gin bar. Although, you know, incidentally, guys, you know, you did let the first public library in Colchester in the town hall become a gin bar. So we have precedent in this, but I'm not looking to do that. I just want a conversation around maximising the revenue opportunity and the experience opportunity. The castle was amazing, but in 10, 20 years' time, let's think about how we can make it even better.
Good. A supplementary?
Yes, I would like a supplementary. Would the Cabinet member not agree with me that putting a bar in the old library, which is a hireable space, which is used for functions? We had, I think, the Alderman celebration. We had an event there post the new aldermans being appointed. It is quite a different set of circumstances to creating something on the roof of our historic castle. The bar in the old library is an enhancement to that facility, and it makes it more hireable, which will bring revenue into the council. But I do think it's a different proposition from putting a bar in the castle. And I don't know if Mr. Laws has actually been, Councillor Laws has actually been up to the roof of the castle, but there isn't a lot of space up there to walk around. And of course, if you did put something up there, safety would be a considerable concern, especially if you're encouraging people to drink up there. So I do think that needs some careful thought, Mr. Mayor, and I do think it's a completely different proposition from renting out to a leaseholder the old library, and they created that bar in that facility, which we have kept. And I actually think probably Councillor Laws should perhaps have a look at that facility to see how that needs to be improved going forward, rather than look for other opportunities.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Laws, would you respond?
I welcome the live discussion. I think there's a bit of a false argument here. I think corporate events and weddings on the roof of the castle with a Kensington-style rooftops garden experience that takes up a little bit more of the footprint than anything at the moment, I think it is quite a big space and it would be an enhancement. But at the moment, it's not a load-bearing ceiling, so we can't have people standing in the middle. And I think that's what we should be looking at. And at the same time, if that means that we can get a lift in there to get people who can't walk up to the top to see all of the castle, then why not have that conversation? I'm not an architect, I'm not an expert, but I do like to see people enjoying themselves and maximising space opportunities. I think it's a conversation to be had. There are no concrete plans for it. It's simply a discussion, and I welcome the opportunity to have that.
Thank you very much. Next pre-notified question is Councillor Lilly. So you're going to ask Councillor Crowe a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, for Councillor Crowe, our Cabinet Member for Environment and Sustainability. Could the Council set up a pump to help relieve the continuous problems of the flooding down at the Hive? The Hive Task Group keeps talking the talk, and we've been talking for months now, but the road still floods and is actually getting worse, I believe. If you talk to people, they now think it's the worst it's ever been. And will the portfolio holder agree to get a pump in there and help the businesses and motorists relieve themselves from the daily nightmare?
Councillor Crowe, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lilly, for pre-notifying your question. This council is determined to work in with partners to facilitate and identify a solution to the ongoing issue of flooding on Haven Road. Our senior officers and our engineer continue to liaise with colleagues at Essex County Council, Anglian Water and the Environment Agency. This has included a recent experiment to test the available capacity of Distillery Pond to store the freshwater flow at times of tidal locking, and we'll be receiving an update on this during the next scheduled Hive Task Force meeting. Also, I've agreed along with Essex County Council to jointly fund the ongoing maintenance of the tide flap valve owned by Anglian Water. And as I know you appreciate, Councillor Lilly, the situation at Haven Road is complex, hence the multi-agency approach to seeking solutions. This has been facilitated by the Hive Task Force that Will Quint set up to bring all parties and stakeholders together. As you are aware, Colchester Council is not the responsible authority for this issue, so as Local Flood and Highways Authority and Local Water Authority respectively, Essex County Council and Anglian Water are well placed to lead on this. At the task force meeting in December, which I believe you attended, Essex Fire and Rescue Service suggested that a high volume pump was used to pump rising water from the manhole on Haven Road where it first appears from. A test of this potential solution was agreed to and will be arranged at the earliest opportunity. At the last Hive Task Force meeting in January, the subject of funding to purchase such a pump, if this proved to be a solution, or one of the range of solutions we need there, was raised, and representatives from Essex County Council and the Environment Agency agreed to look into potential funding sources available to them ahead of the next meeting. You received the same email that I did on Tuesday from Will Quint's assistant Fabian Green, inviting us to the next task force meeting, which takes place 2 weeks tomorrow. The subject of this funding for this pump is clearly stated in the email, and the results of Anglian Water and County's discussions will be discussed at the meeting. Given all this, I'm therefore surprised that tonight you're asking Colchester Council to set it up. However, I hope you are reassured that Colchester Borough Council is doing all it can to enable a solution for local residents and businesses to be found and implemented.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. Councillor Lilly, do you have a supplementary?
I do, yes, thank you. And the answer to the reason why, and I know all that because I attend the meetings, a Colchester resident who got stuck in that floods for 2 days, he phoned me up and asked me to ask this particular question to yourself, because he says he's not getting any answers from anybody else. So it is his question to you and not really mine. I just put it to you. And as I said, I look forward to the next meeting. We'll talk more and talk more. Every day it floods and floods and floods. All those bodies that sit in that, I must agree with me, all the bodies that sit on that task group, they could all get some money. You've got ECC, CBC, Anglian Water, Environmental Agency, the Harbour Master, and everybody else. All of them could give a donation to this pump to put it in to help temporarily relieve the frustrations of all the businesses and the drivers down there. Somebody conked out the other day.
Councillor Lilly, the question is what?
Does he agree with me that it should be, all the money should be taken from those agencies in the task group and get a pump in immediately?
Thank you.
There's been more progress in the last few months than
Could I just have a yes or no answer, please?
You've asked a question, you will get a full answer.
I'll have another go. There's been more progress in the last few months than there has been in decades. I can remember driving through those floodwaters back in the 80s. It's been going on for a very long time. And that progress, it's necessary to have the various agencies involved, and you're not going to get a solution overnight, which is why they did the test recently with stopping the flow from Distillery Pond, and we now are going to test a high volume pump. And you heard me say that Essex County Council and the Environment Agency are looking into potential funding sources. So I don't know why you're then suggesting that everyone else chips in when there should be a source of funding there. And you're also suggesting that the council set it up and I presume pay for it. So would you like council taxpayers in Colchester to pay for something that somebody else is already saying that they will arrange the funding for?
Right, thank you very much. We now have Councillor Fox's question to Councillor Ellis, although I believe Councillor Dundas, as a member of the tendering group, will be answering.
It's not as a member of the tendering group. This is in my portfolio. I know people mentioned earlier we didn't know which portfolios was whose. Well, we do, and the question is to the wrong person.
Thank you very much.
It's great to get a promotion for my question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Please, could the Leader of the Council then confirm that for the planned period to 2033, the tendering Colchester Borders Garden Community will deliver a 50-50 split between the two authorities with regards to meeting our housing target and the proportion of affordable housing that will be delivered?
Thank you. Yes. To 2033, the housing, in terms of housing numbers, will be split, probably around 1,100 to Colchester and tendering each. In terms of affordable housing, well, there's sort of two answers to that. The percentage of affordable housing will be 30%, but the available affordable housing to Colchester will be zero. There is no affordable housing for Colchester tendering Colchester Borders. There never has been. There is nothing in writing which says that there is. We've been searching for it. It does not exist. Beyond 2033, equally, there is no sharing of the housing numbers. Again, over the 5 or 6 years that the project was developed between this council under the Lib Dem Labour Council and tendering, there was nothing ever put in writing to agree to share the housing numbers. So that is the situation at the moment. However, I do have some good news on this. Now, we've had some group leaders meetings. I've also had some constructive private conversations with Councillor Prairie, and we have been talking to tendering. And I hesitate to say this because I remember what happened to the last chap who said this, but in my hand I do have a piece of paper. And for the first time ever, we have an agreement in writing between Colchester Borough Council and Tendering District Council to share the housing numbers as per the Section 1 Local Plan to 2033, to share the affordable housing to 2033, and the intent in writing to share the housing numbers and affordable housing for the complete build-out of tendering Colchester Borders. So I don't like politicking on this, but we have had to correct a huge mistake and oversight which had gone on for a number of years by the last council. So I hope you'll join with me in welcoming that development.
Councillor Fox, do you have a supplementary, please?
I do, and I would like to use my supplementary to set the record straight, Mr. Mayor. I do welcome an agreement to be signed between the two councils, but I think it is correct that it was in writing in the original local plan submitted to a government inspector that the housing target would be shared over the period of the development of the garden community, and that the planning inspector himself removed that and stated that the agreement could only last up until the end of the plan period. As a clarification, I would like to ask the Leader of the Council, if an agreement can't be reached between Colchester Borough Council and Tendring District Council, does he believe that that land will be developed nonetheless, without any influence whatsoever from residents of Colchester?
Well, that's a choice Colchester can make, isn't it? I mean, if Colchester wishes to walk away, then that's down to Colchester. Yes, it's been approved in Section 1 of the local plan. You voted for it. So obviously you expect it to be developed because you voted for it. And once a plan has been approved, then you set the precedents for development. So however it comes about, people are going to put in planning permission there, and they will get permission ultimately, be it on appeal or whatever. I think, though, if we can, well, we have reached agreement with Tendring, and I would like to publicly thank, in particular, Councillor Neil Stock from Tendring for being very cooperative and working in a very constructive manner on this with us. Then I think that is a positive development for Colchester, and I think it is particularly positive that we get potential access to the affordable housing, because Tendring are not in gateway to home choice. As things stood, didn't matter how many affordable houses you built at TCBGC, nobody from Colchester could access them because there wasn't the method to do it, and there was no agreement. And we've even phoned up retired officers to find this out, to see if they'd done anything in writing, and they hadn't. There was no agreement for any access from Colchester. So I think that it will put the entire project in a there are still challenges, but I think if we can firm up this agreement, which I'm very confident we will very, very shortly. We've agreed all the wording. I think it will put the project on a better footing going forward.
Thank you very much. We've now come to the end of the pre-notified questions, and I've got another 7 councillors wanting to ask questions, starting with Councillor Luxford-Vaughan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I have the floor, could I also say that news about an agreement on housing numbers and affordable houses is fabulous, and thank you for your work in securing that. But my question is for the leader, and it is currently all Colchester representatives of the Tendring Culture Borders Garden Community Joint Planning Committee are working well with common goals for our borough's residents. Can we count on your support of any feedback to the master planning options that may or may not go to consultation, and in particular, if, as we anticipate, there is much public feedback saying they do not want to see development south of the A133, that you will support that not going to the inspector?
Thank you. Firstly, I think we can both agree that we do need a new name. The number of times we try and say, I don't think I can say TCBGC again tonight, but my very short answer to that is yes. I absolutely agree with you on that. I believe that it has to be a thorough and very genuine consultation. And if that's what the consultation comes back and says, then it will have my support.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you.
In that case, Councillor Barber, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe my question is probably best placed to the council leader. I am grateful for our frontline services and their work during the recent storm. However, the storm did cause significant problems to many of my residents, not least in respect of power. Although UK Power Networks did work hard to restate power, some properties were without power for at least 4 days, particularly in rural areas. It was felt by those impacted that there was a gap in some of the support structures and emergency planning in rural areas for those properties impacted, and who were suffering while UK Power Network worked hard in difficult conditions to restate it. Would the relevant cabinet member or the leader please agree to work with myself and other elected members if so desired, Essex County Council and relevant parish councils or community groups to assist in drawing up stronger local and tailored contingency plans to support residents where and when power is lost in similar circumstances. Thank you.
Yes, it probably isn't directly in my portfolio, but as leader, I would absolutely support that. In fairness to UK Power Networks, what I will give them credit for, I think, keeping us well informed. I had several emails from UK Power Networks, and I know other councillors did as well, as to what was happening, not just in Colchester, but throughout the borough and indeed East Anglia. So I have to compliment them on that. And I do also understand that they had an incredibly difficult task. I don't know how many lines came down, but they did get most supplies restored very quickly. And in fact, in a lot of areas, I think where people were expecting to lose power, they didn't. They might have lost fences and walls, but they didn't lose electricity. But I'm very happy to work with the relevant portfolio holder to put that in place. I think it's a very good suggestion.
And do you have a supplementary,
No,
Councillor
thank you.
Barber? In that case, the next one is Councillor Hagan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just it's a matter of potentially setting the record straight. Accusations by the Liberal Democrat member for Stanway against the Conservative-led administration raised at the July 14th full council meeting stated the Conservatives had misused the council systems, IT systems, by using them for political purposes. I understand officers investigated the accusation and addressed the issue via an internal email to all members. Could I please ask the Leader of the Council to give a public update on this important concern to ensure the public record is correct? Thank you.
Leader?
Thank you. It seems quite a long time ago now. I'm trying to think back to it. If I recall correctly, the Chief Executive did give an explanation. All the manifestos go on to the internal file system so our officers can view them, because obviously they don't know who's going to be coming in as an administration, and being diligent officers, they prepare themselves for what any of us may wish to do. Now, I understand that all the manifestos were in one directory together, so it should have been fairly apparent that if you look at a screen, you can see the Conservative manifesto, you'd have seen the Labour, Lib Dem and Green manifesto, probably the Highwood Independents, and indeed any other parties standing they're all together on the same system, in the same directory, accessed by the same people in the same way. So I'm not quite sure why the Conservative manifesto was picked out in that way, because they were all there.
Do you have a supplementary?
Considering there was absolutely no question of any misuse of the council system by any political party, including the Conservatives, will the leader please consider calling on the Liberal Democrat group leader to apologise for that said accusation of misuse?
Leader?
I'll leave that up to the Liberal Democrat group leader to decide.
Well, we don't need an answer tonight, thank you. So the next speaker is Councillor Barton, please.
No, I don't think I am. I'm done. I can think of something.
We'll ask Councillor Buston to fill in then, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Leader of the Council. Given the most unusual, but nonetheless very welcome unanimity of purpose, as is rarely seen in Westminster today, across the floor, apropos our country's concern and stance taken in response to the unprovoked invasion of Ukraine by Russia, may I ask the Leader of the Council if he would be willing to sponsor a letter to the Prime Minister from our Council expressing our support for the robust approach taken by the House in this matter. We do not bow down to bullies of any stripe. I do hope that this suggestion and this request would be supported across this chamber. Thank you.
Leader?
Thank you, Councillor Buston. Yes, I would have absolutely no problem doing that at all. I think it's a good suggestion. On the Ukraine issue, obviously it goes slightly above our heads as a local authority, but nonetheless it does affect us and is a very, very serious situation. I do fear what will happen there. I have actually been to the Ukraine a couple of times, and they are very proud and very independently minded people who have been expecting this, I think, ever since they gained independence. And many of them are quite well prepared for it. And I really do fear that should a full war break out and a full invasion, it might have happened already, I haven't checked the news of the Ukraine, I think we will see some very, very dark days and some very serious loss of life. So I hope desperately that people pull back from the brink, but we will see.
Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only to make a point. We have an obligation as a local authority to step forward in times of emergency, particularly if there is the threat of war, of violence. Now might be the time to consider dusting off our plans.
I didn't hear a question, so I'll ignore that, but I'm sure your comments will be noted. The next questioner is Councillor Warnes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Question for the portfolio holder for communities, Councillor Oxford. Last weekend, multiple incidents of graffiti, of the graffiti tag ERKS occurred within the Beer Church ward. This tag is becoming prolific, and whilst I have no doubt our very capable street care team will efficiently clean those tags away, it seems, in the light of your admission following the last but one scrutiny committee, that graffiti tags are not catalogued, the path to successful enforcement action to deter those responsible is in fact broken. This despite senior officers' assurances that they were documented and our recently adopted graffiti strategy stating that they should be. Will she therefore make available the necessary resources are put into place, or will she institute management controls so that my constituents and I can be assured that a full suite of deterrents are available to combat this unnecessary antisocial behaviour when simply cleaning it off may no longer be enough?
Councillor Beverley Oxford, please.
Yes, thank you for your question. I am currently working with the police to find a way forward for this antisocial behaviour. When I said what I said, it's because that is what I had always been told. It wasn't until I dug a little bit further that I actually found that these tags were not catalogued as I always thought they were. I am still working hard to try and find a way forward so that this sort of stuff can actually be put a stop to. It's antisocial behaviour, so it is a police matter, and I am working with the police, and as soon as I get any way forward or any results, I will let you know. But thank you for raising it to me.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair. I'd make the point that this isn't about necessarily getting the police to carry out enforcement action. We have to give them the body of evidence to be able to do that. And Councillor Oxford's admission clearly brings to light that we don't have that ability because we're not cataloguing. So does she agree with me that simply channeling our resources solely into cleaning away graffiti whilst our enforcement cupboard is bare, and that the result is that our recently adopted graffiti strategy is effectively unfit for purpose, and this undermines residents' confidence in in her ability to get on top of this antisocial activity?
Councillor Oxford.
Well, no, I don't think it's unfit for purpose, but antisocial behaviour is a police matter. However way you want to look at it, it is still a police matter, and we need to have a way of actually bringing these people that do it to justice. And if the tags are not recorded, which is why I'm trying to find out why they're not and what can we do to actually record them, then we're never going to find a way forward. But it isn't just the council to do it. We need to have other people to help us to go forward to do it, to bring these people to justice like they deserve.
Right, the next questioner is Councillor Harris, please, online.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. Both of these questions I'm going to raise, Mr. Mayor, were raised at my advice surgery this afternoon, which I attended virtually by virtue of the fact that my PA, my daughter and her family, were there in person, but I was there virtually. The first question is to do with housing, and it may be to the leader or it may be to the housing portfolio holder. Residents were concerned that the people who want a council house are waiting for some of the ones that we bought back. You remember that we bought back some, notably two, one in Rockhampton Walk and one in Prince Charles. They're both standing empty and have been for some time. Is there a dated plan to make these potentially Colchester Borough homes habitable and to allocate to families on that register so Colchester Borough Council can recoup some rent from those properties, please?
Thank you. Councillor Ellis?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that, Mr. Mayor. The answer is I can't tell you what date they're going to become available, Councillor Harris, and I will find out and let you know. The issue that we've had with some of the homes that we've bought back are obviously they need to be brought up to the standard so that we can let them to people. And as you know, we bring buildings up to a very high standard, and we're bringing those buildings up to EPC C and a lot of them to B standards as well. We have got a contractor who's been working on our voids, our usual voids, as well as the 100 Homes project, which is an incredibly good project and has been incredibly successful, as I said to the scrutiny panel last night. We have got 8 of those properties. We've now got a separate contractor who's going to be doing those so that we can bring things on stream faster, but I can't tell you which of the addresses that they are doing from the top of my head. So if you'd like to email me with those, I will make the relevant inquiries for you and let you know. Thank you.
Councillor Harris, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the answer, and I fully support the action that the portfolio said. But would you be able to give us a list of the properties that we're waiting to come online and some sort of idea for the future? Thank you for that.
Councillor Ellis?
Yeah, I'll do my best to do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And my second question, Mr. Mayor, is to the portfolio holder for community and zone teams. A resident today raised this at this virtual meeting about Colchester Borough Council allowing some more multi-use litter bins for litter and dog mess to be added to the stock of our litter bins. Now, I've checked the policy. I did relate that to the people concerned, but they're said to me, is there a way of adding them in if they're already on an existing route and it's so easy to collect when they're just a short walk or on the route as they operatives pass by it, maybe using residents' own money to buy the bin, locality budget or section 106. It was raised all sorts of ways of maybe paying for the bin if we could easily find a way of adding the bin into the route. Thank you for allowing the time to answer the question. Thank you.
Councillor Crowe, perhaps, or Oxford, or both.
Or both. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Well, the litter bins are already being used as as dog bins. You can use them already. So I'm not sure that we would be able to add extra litter bins when we've got bins already being used. And as if you have more litter bins, then it's going to take crews longer to empty them when you've already got bins that can already be used for that purpose.
The next questioner is Councillor Goss, please.
Thank you, Mayor. First question to, I think it's Councillor Crow, it might be Councillor Oxford, we'll see who picks it up. Can you tell me why the recycling bins in the town centre, I've uncovered that the actual contents is not being recycled, it's going straight to landfill. Can you tell me if you're aware and what's being done about it, please?
Councillor Crow.
I will speak to officers and get back to you with a written answer.
Is there a supplementary?
Well, supplementary is, would you be pleased to know that I've already picked up with officers about the issue, and there's already been some social media put out about it, encouraging people to ensure they put their waste in the correct bin, and I've also asked for notices to go on those bins. Would you like to thank me for raising it and getting some action done on it?
Councillor
It's
Crow.
good of you to raise it.
And then my second question, I think again to Councillor Crow, is about the A12. I mentioned it earlier, it is absolutely filthy. It comes up on social media a lot. It is not good. It was handed over in a clean state, and I just wondered why it's not being cleaned and what's being done about it. Because even I'm not going to litter pick the A12. I do the slip roads around McDonald's, but I will not go on the A12.
You're right, it is filthy, and I understand that you have been speaking to officers about this as well, and will know what I know. Highways England are responsible for collecting the litter on the A12, and then it's delegated to us. We receive no funding for this, and we therefore incorporate it into our normal workload as best we can, using the resources we have available. However, this does take specialist safety equipment, specialist safety measures, and this is dependent on us being able to get onto the verges, which have been getting more and more overgrown for the last few years, and it's Highways England responsibility to tackle the overgrowth of the vegetation. So we have to be able to get the vehicles onto the verges, and for the safety of our staff. And this is becoming, as I said, more and more of a problem. And you'll be pleased to hear that the EV vehicles that I mentioned before, the 6 that are on order, are going to have the signage, lights and chevrons on them that we need so that we can increase the number of vehicles we can have out there. So hopefully we'll get on top of this problem. I don't like seeing it either on the occasions when I drive down the A12. It depresses me to see so much rubbish strewn, and it's something I very much want to see tackled as well.
Supplementary, can we have a date when it will all be cleared between Stanway and North Colchester? Because it is filthy. Do we have an actual date and a schedule, please? Because we used to have one.
I can't give you a date. I had a briefing this afternoon, and the subject was left on the note that we are putting a plan together, and that plan will no doubt involve dates. If you want to speak to myself or officers, or I can contact you, I can let you know in time.
Right, next questioner is Councillor Scordis, please.
Yes, question to portfolio holder for communities. It was recently announced that Colchester made 0 prosecutions for fly tipping. Why did this scenario happen, and what plans are afoot to resolve this and prosecute fly tippers?
Yes, Councillor Crow.
So, yes, we have made 0 prosecutions for fly tipping. In order to make a prosecution, you have to have evidence and you have to have a case. Now, the last prosecution was made, I believe, in October 2020. There have been none since, none in the last months of the last administration or in the first months of this administration. When we have an incident of fly tipping where we believe we might have a case and be able to bring about a prosecution, we speak to our legal advisors and they tell us whether it's a case that we can win. And if they say it isn't, then we don't proceed, because we're not in the business of spending public money on court cases that we can't win. And I'd just like to further add, we actually During the year 2021, because obviously you have concerns about littering and fly tipping, during the year 2021, we issued 11 fixed penalty notices. Excuse me, my alarm going off to tell me to take my life-saving pills. During 2021, 11 fixed penalty notices were issued for people littering in the street, and so far in 2022, 11 have been issued as well. Now, fly tipping fixed penalty notices in the year 2020 to 2021, 67 fixed penalty notices were issued, and so far in 2021 to 2022, we've issued 70, so 3 more, and there's some months of that year left, so there's a chance that will rise. So I'm sure you'll join me in being pleased to see that we are tackling that problem where we can.
Good. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I know that I have provided evidence and other councillors have of fly tipping. So I'd ask that Councillor Crowe does investigate why this isn't being taken seriously. And I know that in the past, council officers have issued fines for people dumping rubbish and people have just paid it without warning. So why has that practice stopped where we didn't have an issue? So I don't understand why it's an issue now, but we're being told we can't make these fines.
I'll give you a written answer to that.
Okay, the next questioner is Councillor Scott Patel. Okay, in that case, Councillor Hagan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't get the opportunity last time to congratulate and thank Councillor Crowe in his role as portfolio holder for bringing the first electric waste vehicle to Colchester. The response on the doorstep in Stanway was excellent. It was very well received, and they'd like to see that progress forward, especially as the previous portfolio holder said the technology wasn't there, although Slough Borough Council actually had the truck on the streets 2 months prior to that statement, so I don't know what he was talking about. Anyway, I'd like to ask a question, if you wouldn't mind, because this has been asked by my residents in Stanway, and I want to ask it publicly. Would the portfolio holder please consider, if you're going to get the electric waste truck back in Colchester, would you consider running it on the streets of Stanway and maybe showing it off to those people that are interested to see this modern technology in action? Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for your question, Councillor Hagan. The electric waste vehicle has caused a bit of a buzz at Shrub End when we knew we were getting it. What our officers learned in September of last year that it was going to be available to have on a trial basis. It didn't actually happen earlier in the year, as was reported on social media. It was September, and they leapt on the opportunity and arranged the trial, which you're obviously clearly aware of. I went along to Shrub End when it was delivered, and it was fantastic to see. And obviously it rolled silently off the back of the vehicle it was delivered on. The feedback I've had is that the crews absolutely loved it. It's limited to 30 miles an hour, but it gets there a lot quicker than the current vehicles because it's electric and it's got all that torque, so it can really accelerate. So they really enjoyed it. And yes, certainly if we can get it back, I would certainly see that it goes to Stanway and that councillors are notified so that they can go along and catch it themselves.
Do you have a supplementary question?
No question, just to say thank you.
Excellent. In that case, we'll go to Councillor Julie Young, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's surprising, this electric vehicle, and I wondered what information you have had about this electric waste vehicle, because our understanding was the technology wasn't there yet and it wouldn't be a good investment for the council to go down that road. My understanding is that you pay an awful lot of money for an electric car. You might pay something like 27,000 for an electric car, and the battery on that electric car only lasts about 7 or 8 years. The replacement battery is about 17,000. So I wonder, Councillor Crowe, if you've done your homework on this vehicle and what you can help us in letting us know whether it would be value for money for going down that road, because it looks very much like this is just a PR stunt for me.
Councillor Crowe.
I don't have the technical spec on the vehicle, and I do know, yes, it is very, very expensive. We're not in a position yet to be investing in such vehicles, so we would expect the cost to come down. I think we're 4 years away from maybe making that decision. The only limitation on that particular vehicle was range. It didn't quite have sufficient range for our longest rounds, but again, we're looking at new technology over time, so we would expect vehicles to be available that can cope with the demands that we place on them.
Good. A supplementary, Councillor Young?
I guess my supplementary would be, before we make grand announcements about things like that, we thoroughly research, because we wouldn't want to mislead the public in believing that you are supportive of getting these new vehicles, when in fact it might not be advisable for us to be going down that road. And it leads to misunderstanding and disappointment, certainly as it seems for the people of Stanway.
We are committed to going down that road. We declared a climate emergency. We're going to electrify our fleet by 2030. We have that commitment. And on that road, we have taken the opportunity to take a trial of a vehicle that isn't likely to be the vehicle that we're going to buy. There's another vehicle out there that's being produced that has solar panels on the roof, so it can be charging while it's going around. So there may be plenty of other options for us further down the road.
Right, thank you very much, councillors. That's the end of the question session. We're now on to item 9, which is the approval of non-attendance. Councillor Dundas, please. You have 5 minutes if you wish it.
Well, where to start? Firstly, I move that the recommendations in the Monitoring Officer's report be approved and adopted relating to approval of non-attendance. Motion E. I think I should just very briefly explain what we're voting for. This relates primarily to full council on the 20th of December 2021, which I'm sure members remember was an extra special full council for the appointment of a new chief executive. It was called at relatively short notice, and of course there was a reduction in capacity in the Moot Hall due to the development of the Omicron, however you pronounce it, variant at the time. Therefore, a number of members who wanted to attend physically could not and had to attend virtually, which under the current rules does not count either towards their attendance record or towards the 6-month attendance rule. And I think that a number of people expressed quite reasonably that was rather unfair, particularly those who had an unblemished 100% attendance record at full council, which includes myself. So I think that this is a very, very sensible move to effectively register or note, or however you wish to determine it, anybody who attended virtually as having attended that meeting, both for their record on attendance and for the 6-month rule. So I think it's a sensible move, and I can't see any reason why anybody would not support it.
Councillor Oxford, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just want to pick up on that because we weren't at the meeting in December because it was held in the Moot Hall, and we didn't consider it to be safe to attend with 51 people going to be crammed in the Moot Hall under the circumstances with the COVID. So I don't think it's fair to criticise those who felt they couldn't go for very legitimate reasons as well. Thank you.
The leader?
I shall sum up, and I fully concur with Councillor G. Oxford, and that's precisely one of the reasons why I think we need to pass this motion. So I suggest we move to the vote.
So I think we can have a hand vote for this one. This is just to legalise our continuation as councillors. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next item, which is item 10, schedule of decisions taken by portfolio holders. Are they noted? Excellent. Who's got an urgent item? No? We all have to go home then. Oh, thank you very much for your attendance, and I've thoroughly enjoyed being your mayor, and we'll have a new mayor next time.
You can't go yet.
What?
You can't go until we go.
No, yep. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, apparently you've got to wait till the mace leaves the room. Anyway, thank you, and see you all again soon.